To everyone.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Very good. And now we will go to the next presentation, and it is one of my favorites. I am pleased to be able to introduce this month's recipient of our Community Commitment Award, the month of August. Her name is Taba Sayed, and for the past 12 years, Ms. Sayed has been a committed volunteer at the Islamic Center of Conejo Valley. She leads youth discussion circles and youth-centric lectures. Baking and cooking classes during COVID were especially successful virtually. Storytime, arts and crafts, and study sessions. She's also a Sunday school teacher for second and third graders at the weekly Islamic school. Taba was raised in Thousand Oaks, graduated from Westlake High School, where she actually helped start a Spanish club. And after earning her degree at UC San Diego, she returned to her hometown to continue to volunteer, and she has devoted herself to giving back to the entire community. She is the embodiment of patience, respect, and cooperation, which is why she was nominated to receive the Community Commitment Award for August. Hi, I'm Claudia Bale de la Pena, Mayor for the City of Thousand Oaks, and it is a pleasure to introduce you to this month's honoree of our wonderful Community Commitment Award, and her name is Taba Sayed. Congratulations.
Thank you.
So I'm presenting to you on behalf of the city the Certificate of Recognition along with the Community Commitment Award for the month of August.
Thank you.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Throughout all these years with volunteering, as busy as you were going to middle school, to high school, to college, and yet you found time to give back to the community at large. Why?
I think I have to give a lot of credit to the community I grew up in. I grew up around so many people that were just always volunteering themselves and helping out whenever you can. And I think that's just the spirit of being in a community. Sometimes you give help and sometimes you receive it. So I've been blessed to be able to give help as much as I can these past few years.
You have also volunteered at different houses of worship, including Adat Elohim on Hillcrest Drive and elsewhere. And what was that like?
Well, it's nice to be connected to the larger community in Ventura County as well. Sometimes you get into a bubble of the people that you know. So it's nice to go out and meet different people, and you get also a lot of inspiration for activities that you can do in your smaller community from that.
What has been the most fulfilling service for you personally?
The thing I enjoy doing most is probably teaching at Sunday school. It's a small classroom, but it's little kids, and they just take in so much, and it's just such a pleasure to be able to work with them every week. The teaching is done in English, but we teach multiple subjects. So I teach Islamic studies about the religion. We teach Arabic, so learning your letters and how to read in Arabic. And then also we teach Quran memorization, so memorizing little chapters of the Holy Book.
As a member of the ICCV community, I've seen you doing volunteer work, not just targeted at the youth, but through other venues. I know that you are one of many youth in our community who have been very integrated and spend a lot of your volunteer time supporting the ICCV community. But I just felt that you were a catalyst as well as a driver for many of the programs. So I wanted you to be recognized for that.
I do appreciate it, and I do appreciate the spotlight on the Muslim community.
What is the message that you have as a Muslim woman for the rest of our community?
The greatest part of being in a community is that you're never alone. So we always have each other, and we might be different from different backgrounds, different upbringings, different lifestyles, whatever it is, but we should be there for each other when it counts.
And that is why you are the recipient of this month's Community Commitment Award, because you care, there are no boundaries, no barriers, because we're all together. Again, congratulations on your award, and continue the wonderful work that you are doing, spreading cheer throughout our community. Appreciate that very much.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
And if you know someone that you would like to nominate for our Community Commitment Award, please go to our website, www.toaks.org/CCA. And that was Taba Sayed. She's not able to join us tonight because of work, but on behalf of the entire City Council, I would like to congratulate her on this recognition and thank her for her commitment to serving the people of Thousand Oaks. And also, again, thank you to our TO TV crew for a wonderful production. And with that, we will now go to public comments. Madam Clerk?
This is the time and place for public comments for those wishing to address the City Council regarding items on the agenda or on a subject within the city's jurisdiction. All remarks should be addressed to the council as a whole. Speakers are requested to state their name and community of residence for the record. Under state law, public comment matters may not be considered by the council unless listed on the agenda, but may be referred to the city manager for administrative follow-up. 10 individuals have requested to speak, and pursuant to council standards, speakers are allowed 3 minutes.
Thank you. Our first speaker is Rondi Guthrie.
Okay. Good evening, Mayor Vilde La Peña, City Council members, and city staff. My name is Rondi Guthrie, and I'm the Vice President of Government Affairs with Athens Services and a lifelong Ventura County resident. Being part of this community means being local, and I am thrilled to be working with you in this capacity. I wanted to take a moment to address the mailer that was sent out over the weekend by Waste Management. This mailer is spreading false accusations about our company and is attacking the decision you made in March to award Athens Services the waste, recyclable material, and organics waste collection services contract. The allegations are unequivocally false and couldn't be further from the truth. As you know, this council selected Athens Services after a thorough review and evaluation process. In fact, this contract was awarded after a multi-year process where your staff and environmental consultant thoroughly vetted all proposals and ranked Athens highest in overall score and value to the community of Thousand Oaks. To ensure a fair and competitive bid process, you evaluated all proposals on several criteria, including qualification, experience and reputation, financial qualification, technical approach, sustainability, diversion and outreach, and customer service. Again, Athens Services ranked highest in the overall score. The average customer stands to save 29% with Athens Services compared to current waste management rates. City staff and City Council did an exceptional job managing this bid process to ensure the award was fair and equitable for both the city and its ratepayers. And I would like to emphasize this contract prohibits extraordinary rate increases. Athens stands behind our ability to provide better service at fair and competitive rates. Ultimately, as the scores reflected, rates was just one of the many reasons Athens was selected as your next waste hauler. As a family-owned company based in Southern California, Athens Services will focus on positively impacting the community. We recently opened the Thousand Oaks Sustainability Center, the first of its kind, to promote environmental stewardship and sustainability efforts. As we move forward, our goal is to provide world-class customer service, innovative recycling, and fully sustainable organics and composting programs. Today, our recycling coordinators are in the community, educating businesses on the proper way to reduce, reuse, and recycle materials like never before. We are grateful for this new partnership with the community of Thousand Oaks and look forward to the start of our services on January 1st, 2022. I would like to invite you and any member of the community to visit our Thousand Oaks Sustainability Center located at 2251 East Thousand Oaks Boulevard, or go to AthensThousandOaks.com to learn more about our programs and services. Thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you. And I would like to add that I believe the City of Thousand Oaks on its website has an FAQ for any questions or any concerns that residents may have regarding the waste hauler contract. Next, we have Clint Fultz. Good evening.
Hello, my name is Clint Fultz, and I live in Thousand Oaks. I'm a member of the Conejo Climate Coalition, and I'm here to talk about bike lanes. Thanks to the Public Works Department for the great public information meetings last week, and a special thanks to Kathy Naum for fielding my call today. I'd like to start by paraphrasing a webpage from the City of Thousand Oaks website. Next spring and summer, the City of Thousand Oaks Public Works Department will be resurfacing the pavement on 3 separate roadways. After repaving, the city has an opportunity to upgrade the pavement striping to make the roadway more user-friendly to bicyclists and pedestrians. The city invites you to voice your opinion on striping modifications that will help address concerns over vehicle speeds and bicyclist and pedestrian safety. If you want more bike lanes in Thousand Oaks, go to www.toaks.org/lanes and voice your support for more bike lanes. The transportation sector accounts for 62% of all greenhouse gas emissions in Thousand Oaks, and new bike lanes would be a great opportunity to reduce pollution by increasing bicycle ridership in our community. New bike lanes are a simple and much needed opportunity to enhance our air quality and health while simultaneously lowering the fossil fuel pollution, which drives drought, water scarcity, and wildfire risk. I understand they aren't part of the current plan, but I'd like to just briefly advocate for protected bike lanes. Bike ridership increases across the board when there's protected bike lanes. Cities that build protected lanes for cyclists end up with safer roads for people on bikes, people in cars, and pedestrians. Protected separated bike facilities were one of the biggest factors associated with lower fatalities and lower injuries for all road users, according to several studies. In conclusion, be sure to head over to www.toaks.org/lanes and voice your support for more bike lanes. Fill out the survey, write an email, and call in by tomorrow, Wednesday, August 31st. Additionally, I'd like to thank the council for approving the local road safety plan and its roadway improvement plans to enhance bicycle access across the 101 freeway. Thanks everyone for your time.
Thank you. Next up, Roseanne Witt. Good evening.
Madam Mayor, council members, I'm Roseanne Witt from Thousand Oaks. This month, 195 countries approved IPCC's 6th assessment on climate science. The report echoes daily images of unprecedented tragedy impacting every region on Earth, the consequences of failing to act on past warmings. CO2 levels are at their highest level in 2 million years. Methane levels are higher than at any point in 800,000 years. The world's leading authority on climate science unequivocally blames the burning of fossil fuels for both temperature rise and the resulting heat, water scarcity, drought, wildfires, storms, and flooding disasters that are now part of daily life. The report is unambiguous. We need immediate, rapid, and large-scale action to cut greenhouse gas pollution in half this decade to avoid exceeding the threshold between manageable and catastrophic risk. Our region's fact sheet already observes larger temperature change than the global mean. It's virtually certain it will continue to get hotter, and snow cover, thus available water, will keep declining. Drought and fire weather will continue to worsen. Every pound of GHG pollution and every fraction of a degree of extra heating will accelerate and magnify the destruction and suffering. Compound extreme events in which unprecedented, simultaneous, or overlapping hazards of increased intensity and duration will occur more frequently, straining our emergency response resources, as occurred when the Borderline shooting and Woolsey fire struck within 24 hours. The good news is every pound of greenhouse gas pollution and every fraction of a degree of heating we prevent can reduce these impacts. But every day we delay implementation narrows our window of opportunity to stabilize temperatures at a level to which we can realistically adapt. IPCC calls for strong, rapid, and sustained reductions in methane as the fastest strategy to stall temperature rise. So while I look forward to our climate action plan, mitigation need not and must not wait for its completion. Your council must implement measures now to ensure all development in TO is constructed without gas infrastructure that once in place will pollute our climate for decades, when we now know it will inevitably result in unacceptable costs, financial and social, which you can preemptively avoid. Adopt Santa Barbara's REACH code prohibiting new gas connections and add another requiring solar panels and battery storage on all new buildings. Local clean energy generation plus storage prevent power shutoffs and building electrification in turn incentivizes the solar and batteries that maximize grid reliability. Your choices decide our health, safety, and quality of life. Please read IPCC's summary for policymakers and implement solutions to protect TO families here and now. Please agendize discussions on effective climate actions, not in a year or two, but right now. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Faith Grant is next, followed by Gary Wartick.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and City Council members. My name is Faith Grant, and I live in Westlake Village. My comments tonight reference the IPCC report also, which coincidentally is featured in the Thousand Oaks Sustainability newsletter that came out this afternoon. The recent IPCC, or Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change report, issued August 9th, was consistent in its warnings. The report was nothing less than, quote, a code red for humanity. The alarm bells are deafening and the evidence is irrefutable, end of quote. Created in 1988, the objective of the IPCC is to provide governments at all levels with scientific information that they can use to develop climate policies. I want to underscore the words government at all levels. Tonight, I am urging the City Council and officials to look through a climate lens and ask how city projects and policies affect our climate. For example, on tonight's agenda, there is an approved expenditure for asphalt paving. Were cool pavements considered during the expenditure evaluation? Hot pavements or asphalt, which comprise about 1/3 of urban services, aggravate heat islands by warming the local air and contribute to global warming by radiating heat into the atmosphere. Conversely, cool pavements lower the outside air temperatures, allowing air conditioners to cool buildings with less energy. And cool pavements also cool the city air, reducing heat-related illnesses, slowing the formation of smog, and making it more comfortable to be outside. So one can see how considering the climate implications of just 1 or 2 paving contracts can have an impact on our climate. How many other opportunities are out there? According to Dr. Helene Hewitt, an IPCC report author and scientist, every fraction of a degree of additional heating will accelerate and compound the destruction and suffering. Every bit of warming really does matter. The Conejo Climate Coalition asked the City Council and other city departments to read the IPCC report and use a climate lens as an integral part in evaluating the climate impact of every project and policy so that humans can avert a climate code red. Thank you.
Thank you. Gary Wartick, followed by Kinsey Flame. Good evening.
Mayor and Council, I'm Gary Wartick. I'm a 34-year resident of Ventura County, and I live in Camarillo, and I'm here this evening to talk about item 10C on the agenda as a member of the Board of Directors of the New West Symphony. I've served as a member since 2010. From 1998 to 2011, I served as this city's first economic development manager. During that period, I became particularly aware that the New West Symphony was and remains one of the important amenities that makes this community what it is, a very desirable place to live, work, recreate, and even be entertained. New West Symphony contributes classical and other types of music that is adding tens of thousands of dollars to the local community through ticket sales, salaries, hotel sales, retail sales, and other items. The Conejo Valley, though, is not just about jobs, good housing, parks, and good schools. We're also about the arts. For 25 years, the New West Symphony has been one of the 3 resident companies that has provided the entertainment entire Conejo Valley, and in fact, all of Ventura County, with music and public school level education programs tied to that music. New West Symphony normally has presented its mix of music with a 70-person orchestra performing in the Cavalier Theater. Currently, the pandemic has financially challenged almost all of our local nonprofits. Symphony is no exception. We've been unable to provide live performances in the Cavalier for nearly 18 months, with perhaps another 4 months or so yet to go. During this period, we've worked with our musicians to create online performances that have been well received and have helped keep public interest in the New West Symphony and thus helped keep the doors open. The Symphony received federal PPP funds over the period, without which we could not have paid our staff and the orchestra members who have been performing online. As well, we've made a challenging effort to continue to pursue fundraising among our former concert goers and others who recognize the value of the symphony. In other words, during the period, we've taken the initiative to provide online performances in the best fashion that technology will allow, and to supplement federal funds with our own ongoing fundraising efforts. As we approach fiscal year end tonight, August 31st, we find that we have funds only available to help keep New West Symphony operating during the next 4 months. We're also facing a $1 million fiscal year operating loss that the Symphony cannot afford again. Ultimately, we're seeking enough funds to keep the Symphony operating until live performances can return sometime next year. We understand that the $1 million that's been recommended by staff to spread among TO Arts and other local worthy nonprofits outside the arts is a significant amount. We are requesting that the allocation for the arts within that $1 million be set at a 50-50 ratio, or $500,000 to be shared among all of the arts. We will then work with the other organizations and the city to determine how much of the $500,000, should council approve that, will go to the New West Symphony.
Mr. Wartic, your time is up.
Keep the symphony operating and to ensure continuation of our local cultural programs.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Kinsey Flame, followed by Leanne Holland.
Good evening, Mayor, City Council members, and community. My kids attend Benyon Elementary, and our family lives on Michael Drive. Tonight, I'm here to talk about crossing guards. If you've ever experienced pick up or drop off at Earth's, I have to give a shout out to Howard. Not only does Howard put a smile on every single child that passes him, but he also ensures that traffic keeps moving. Last week, we had a substitute crossing guard, and the traffic was backed up all the way onto Borchard by the AM/PM. Crossing guards play a vital role when it comes to pick up and drop off at all our schools. Some schools have 1 crossing guard, some have 2, and others have 3. My children's school, where they actually cross Lynn Road, does not have any at the moment. We are to rely on our children to know to walk down to Reno where there's a light for them to cross. At Earth and Sequoia, there's no crossing guard at Michael and Borchard, which students from Earth, Sequoia, and Newbury Park High School use to cross. My family has often crossed Michael and Borchard to get to Newbury Park Gateway Park, where we have been almost hit multiple times, to the point of instead of pushing my stroller across the crosswalk, I pull it across. I know that there is a large shortage of workers in our area and businesses are hiring all over the place. I just ask that the city be a little more aware of which schools don't have crossing guards and which schools have multiple crossing guards. Most of us haven't picked up or dropped off at a school with this many cars in many, many months. And I'll be totally honest when I say that some of us may have forgotten the rules. Some of us may have forgotten what it's like to have 300 families dropping off at one location in a 30-minute period. We have forgot to give each other grace and to slow down. Thank you so much, Mayor De La Pena, for reaching out to me when you saw my post about the drop-off and pick-up madness. I hope that it can be resolved soon so our children can walk home from school safely. For community members, there are 2 job postings on the city's website. If you can think of anyone, send them a message or give them a call. Thank you for taking the time to listen, and have a wonderful week.
Thank you. And just so you know, your concerns and comments that I received from you today were also forwarded to staff, and we are looking into the situation. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. Next, we have Leanne Holland, followed by Adam Haverstock.
Good evening, Mayor Bill De La Pena, council members, and city staff. My name is Leanne Holland, and I live in Newbury Park. I am the leader of Thrive Conejo, and we are part of Conejo Unido. Conejo Unido believes that diversity is a fact, equity is a choice, inclusion is an action, and belonging is an outcome. We are so grateful that the Council has embraced the diversity of our city and has chosen to make equity and inclusion a top goal for Thousand Oaks. City leaders and staff have already taken first steps toward putting this goal into action. To reach the desired outcome of belonging for everyone who lives in Thousand Oaks, it's important to understand what that means for community members who are often marginalized. As the parent of a child with disabilities, I've learned that one of the challenges that disabled people face is navigating systems that weren't designed with their needs in mind. Whether it's healthcare, schools, employment, or access to public services and spaces, there's often an extra layer of bureaucracy to go through or a need to ask for accommodations to be able to participate fully in the community and in everyday life. Incorporating the principles of universal design into planning processes is an effective way for decision makers to remove barriers for everyone. A great example of universal design is the curb cut. Originally designed for wheelchair users, the curb cut is also helpful for parents and caregivers pushing strollers, people riding bikes and skateboards, and people pulling luggage or pushing hand carts. The curb cut makes sidewalks more accessible for everyone. Though universal design began in the world of architecture, the practice of removing barriers can be applied in almost any walk of life. For my daughter, participating in elementary school plays was always a challenge. Every year, it was an uncomfortable event for our family, and we always ended up feeling like outsiders who weren't really part of the school community. Then in 5th grade, information came home about the annual play with a Post-it attached. The note was from her 5th grade teacher explaining that the staff were working on a plan to make sure my daughter was fully included in the play. That Post-it note moved me to tears. What followed was the most inclusive experience of my daughter's entire time in elementary school. Teachers and staff filmed her dialogue over a couple of weeks and projected the video on screen so that she could deliver her lines during the play. She was able to observe from the sidelines and take a bow in front of the stage with the other students once it was over. The joy on her face was indescribable, and our family has never felt so embraced by our school community. I ask that you keep this story and the idea of removing barriers in mind as you weigh decisions about the future of our city. Together, we can make the ideals of equity and inclusion a reality in Thousand Oaks. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for sharing that story with us. Next, we have Adam Haverstock, followed by Marianne Van Zyl.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is Adam Haverstock, and I'm the Director of Government Affairs and Tourism for the Greater Conejo Valley Chamber of Commerce, here with a couple updates from your chamber this evening. The first is I wanted to talk about a new event we are putting together. It is a job fair for Conejo Valley. It is going to be on Wednesday, September 22nd from 9 a.m. to noon at the Gardens at Los Robles Greens. This is an effort by the Chamber of Commerce to help address the current labor shortage throughout the Conejo Valley and, the state and the nation. It is a free event for job seekers to attend, and there is a small fee for businesses to reserve a table. It is open to all. You do not need to be a chamber member to participate. And more information is on the calendar on the chamber website at conejochamber.org. We are asking both businesses and job seekers to register in advance, but walk-in job seekers will also be welcome. Secondly, I wanted to mention that nominations are open for the Chamber's annual awards gala. And that event has 6 categories. We have our Man and Woman of the Year. We have Volunteer of the Year, Business of the Year, Nonprofit of the Year, and a new category, Small Business of the Year this year. Winners will be honored at this year's annual recognition gala on Friday, October 8th at the Hyatt Regency Westlake. And the nomination form is on the front page of the chamber website, conejochamber.org. And then finally, I wanted to mention a piece of legislation that came up last week, and that is Senate Bill 9. The Greater Conejo Valley Chamber of Commerce is opposed to Senate Bill 9, which I believe is heading to the governor's desk now. Mayor Bill de la Pena posted about this bill on social media the other day, so we wanted to bring it up. This is the bill that would prevent cities from setting their own rules about the number of units that can be built on a given parcel of land. While the chamber is vocal about the need for workforce housing in our community, we also want to maintain the character of our single-family neighborhoods. And Senate Bill 9 will not solve the housing crisis, so we are opposed to that bill. Thank you to the city for also weighing in on this very important bill. Thank you. That concludes my comments this evening, unless there are any questions.
Thank you very much for your comments. Appreciate them. Our last speaker is Marianne Van Zyl. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. My name is Marianne Van Zyl, and I am a resident of Thousand Oaks. I'm a member of the Thousand Oaks Livability Action Network. Congratulations on passing a new land use map as the beginning of the general plan review process. I understand as the next step in the general plan review and revision, the housing element will be presented to the Planning Commission in late September. We are eager to have a chance to review the proposed housing opportunity sites and the progress made toward our affordable housing goals in the last 8 years since the 2014 housing element. There are two components that are essential to the development of affordable housing Thousand Oaks that are not part of the general plan: a set of objective design standards and an inclusionary housing ordinance. As our land use plan and housing elements are approved by the state, we will move into a system of development by right, which means if a developer proposes a project that conforms to our land use plan and meets our objective design standards, it must be approved administratively and will not come before a planning commission or a city council, where developers have been encouraged to include affordable housing. We are eager to see the objective design standards and to assure ourselves that they are rational and not so onerous that every developer requires a waiver and must become before planning commission or council. An inclusionary housing ordinance must be put in place if we expect developers to include affordable housing in their proposals. An inclusionary housing ordinance is where the city can outline requirements for the inclusion of a certain percentage or number of affordable housing units in every development of rental and for sale homes. We are eager to see what the city will propose for objective design standards and inclusionary housing, the inclusionary housing ordinance. While these are not within the scope of the general plan review, and then I'm assuming will not go in front of GPAC, I encourage the city to make sure that there is enough time and a process in place for meaningful public input. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And that concludes public comments. I will now go to the city manager. Yes, Mr. Powers.
Thank you so much, Mayor Bill de la Pena. Just wanted to follow up on a couple of items that were mentioned. Appreciate Representative from Athens Services coming forward and providing some additional clarity based on the mailer that was sent out with quite a bit of inaccurate and misleading information. Also, that you noted, we do have information up on our website at toaks.org, right on the main page under our news section, that provides some additional background and clarity, including a link to the council meeting that talked about this item in great detail. In regards to the discussion on crossing guards, we do have we're very fortunate in this community that the city actually provides the crossing guard services on behalf of the school district, as we do with the school resource officers. Actually, the city pays for those positions at those locations. We spend over $300,000 a year providing those crossing guards. As the speaker very eloquently mentioned, we are in the midst across the board, just like every other business out there, in desperate need of staffing. We are currently staffing fully, some with multiple crossing guards at 22 of our 24 locations. Some have multiple. At that particular location, due to staffing shortages, we have to triage. We had a great deal of crossing happening at Kalina and other areas, and so we had to bring some folks over. We were seeing 1 to 2 crossings per hour at that particular location. That said, we are actively recruiting, and we're actually putting full-time city staff at times out into the field to assist in these areas. So we will definitely reach out to the resident, definitely as a parent, understand and appreciate the concern there, but it is an ongoing challenge. For those that may be interested, those positions do pay $21 an hour. Go to toaks.org/jobs. There's an application up there. If you know anyone that's interested in being part of that, we'd be happy to have them join our crossing guard force. Our Public Works Department works very carefully at analyzing these locations and understanding how many crossings are happening and understanding where we need to add guards and where we may need to look at removing guards. And that's always a difficult equation. But there is a value component, and we have to make sure that we're providing adequate safety and doing that in a fiscally responsible way. So we will definitely reach out to the resident, and we'll definitely make sure that we're continuing to provide great, safe service at those locations. In regards to the question about objective design standards, later this fall, I will be coming forward to the City Council, and we're also working on the inclusionary housing ordinance. All of those are elements that will fuel the housing element and the general plan process as we move forward. That concludes my comments.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. I see Mr. Haydari also on screen, and since you mentioned the crossing guards, I wonder if Mr. Haydari could give us a quick update regarding the Wendy situation that I think one of our residents brought up. It was something with a sidewalk or a crossing.
My pleasure, Madam Mayor. This is not a crossing guard location. However, it is a new crosswalk location that the city is in the middle of constructing at the intersection of Wendy and Charlotte. This is an item that came before the City Council earlier this year, and we're actively pursuing that project and are hoping to complete the project by the end of September or early October to provide another safe means of crossing Wendy Drive with some assistance of some signage and some lighting. So we're excited about that project. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And with that, we now go to our consent calendar, item number 7 on our.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I wonder
Mr.
if
Jones?
I might just mention, I'm not familiar with this letter that Waste Management evidently has sent out. I don't know to whom they sent it, or I don't know the content of it, but it disturbs me a lot. And I wonder if we have, by way of the council meeting tonight, we have noted it, but I'm wondering if we ought to do more, that we ought to make the public aware that this is a letter containing many inaccuracies. In other words, I would like to examine how we can make this known to the public, because in about 3 months, we're going to be instituting the Athens service. And I wouldn't want the general public to have some misconceptions that there is something wrong with this new service, because I don't believe there is. Do you think there's some way that we can perhaps publicize our response to this inaccurate letter more than just by talking about it here tonight?
As I mentioned earlier, that the city actually has on its website an FAQ page regarding Athens services, so that anybody in the community who has questions can actually go on the website and find the facts. And obviously, this item is not on the agenda, but certainly for informational purposes, the residents can go onto the city's website and look for the Athens Services FAQ. And Athens is also in the process, besides appearing tonight, countering all of these accusations using other channels, and our city manager can speak to that.
Just very, very briefly, obviously, because it's not agendized, but I wanted to let Councilmember Jones know. I'll be happy to send you a copy via email over. It was a direct mail piece that arrived over the weekend. Interestingly, Athens had their welcome letter that arrived just yesterday into mailboxes. So you may have begun receiving that if you're residents. We have had a conversation with Athens. They are going to be having a number of responses out there, utilizing various media sources, and are actively involved in countering the falsehoods.
Thank you. All right, we can now go to the consent calendar, item number 7. Is there anything that my colleagues would like to pull?
Yes, Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I'd like a little more discussion on items F, and L.
F and L, okay. And is someone ready to move the remainder of the consent calendar?
I'll move the remainder of the consent calendar.
Okay. Please vote.
Councilmember Adam?
Yes.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember McNamee?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Engler?
Yes.
And Mayor Bill De La Pena?
Yes.
And that motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. Councilmember Jones, item F and L.
I'd just like a little more information, if I may, on the local road safety plan, so I might understand it a little better.
Yeah, Councilmember Jones, this is Nader with the Public Works Department. Yeah, this is a plan that we recently put together by, a third-party independent traffic engineering expert to take a look at our roadways and see how we can go about making them even more safe. This plan also, as of next year, becomes required for municipalities to have in place if they are to pursue certain grants from Caltrans and so forth. So we're ahead of the curve when we got the grant completed. And in fact, some of the findings of the grant were already, of the plan, already helped us secure about $800,000 worth of grants for various components such as guardrails, reflective backplates, and flashing beacons for various areas citywide, which we were successfully able to obtain earlier this year. So the plan outlines additional potential safety improvements beyond that, and we're going to be pursuing grant opportunities to try to bring those to fruition in the coming year or two.
These are all items that would make our roads safer to drive on and walk across. Is that it?
Yeah, data-driven study to see, where those locations are and what can be done, or what are the tools and means that are available to improve the safety in those locations.
With that in mind, since a moment ago you talked about Charlotte and Wendy, that is Wendy at that point is, if people are going north, they're coming downhill, and they tend to develop a lot of speed right there at Charlotte. And is there some way we can put flashing lights or the same type of thing perhaps that we put at some of the schools? I'm thinking of Colina in the crosswalk there, because some people think if there are two lines across the street they can walk on, that makes them automatically safe. I think we ought to really be concerned about putting that crosswalk there across Wendy at Charlotte because of the speed. Is there some?
Yeah, we're going to be doing a more advanced crosswalk there. It's not just striping. It will include signage, and it will include some lighting and newer generational lightings, not the ones that are in the asphalt, but the ones that are LED lights that are brighter, that are at each corner to attract the driver's attention.
Well, I'm glad to hear it, because I would be very careful crossing Wendy at that area. So thanks for doing that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And now item L.
Item L, I'd like to publicize the memorial service for former Mayor and Councilman Lawrence Horner. Do we have the date of that, Madam Mayor?
September 11.
September 11th. He's been a great contributor. I've known him for 50 years, and he served for over 16 years on the council and was really responsible for a lot of positive, important improvements in the city. And I'd just like to make note of that for the general public. I hope as many as hear this and understand what a great guy he was and what a great contribution he made to the city would be in attendance at that particular facility. We just lost him, and it's really sad that that's happened, and I'd like to show our respect for him. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Jones. Would you like to move items F and L?
Yes, I would like to move item F and item L.
Okay. We have a motion. Please vote.
Councilmember Adam?
Yes.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember McNamee?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Engler?
Yes.
And Mayor Bill de la Pena?
Yes.
And that motion carries 5-0. And I do have an ordinance title to read into the record. Ordinance amending sections of municipal code adjusting campaign contribution limits to reflect changes in California Consumer Price Index, CPI, and setting reevaluation timeframe for base limit, ordinance number 1687 NS.
Thank you. And also, as a reminder, Councilmember Jones and everyone else, we will adjourn today's meeting in memory of Larry Horner. And next is item 10A, which is the Los Feliz Sidewalk Project, Phase 2, and this will be presented by our Public Works Deputy Director, Mr. Haydari.
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor. And good evening. I'm here tonight to present the Los Feliz Phase 2 Sidewalk Project. Please advise if the screen share is working properly.
It is.
Great. With me tonight are Senior Engineer Mike Davidian and Engineering Associate Michelle McCarty to present on the project and address any questions. Here's the project limits, the location map. The project is on both sides of Los Feliz Drive between Thousand Oaks Boulevard and Conejo School Road. It's approximately half of a mile in total length. Phase 1 of the project from Skyline to Conejo School Road was successfully completed in 2016, and therefore the completion of this segment will provide one of the last missing pedestrian access linkages to connect the entire surrounding neighborhood to the Thousand Oaks Boulevard area and Civic Arts Plaza area. This missing sidewalk has been requested by the community, and the city is responding by virtue of this project to the community's needs. The main objectives of this project are to improve the overall safety for the community by providing a continuous sidewalk on Los Feliz Drive from Thousand Oaks Boulevard to Conejo School Road. This will help accommodate the substantial pedestrian activity that's in that neighborhood from the large multifamily residential developments, as well as the parents and students accessing Conejo Elementary School, which is at the eastern end of the project at Los Feliz Drive and Conejo School Road. Other objectives of the project include upgrading existing sections of sidewalk to become compliant with the latest federal ADA standards, completing the project while minimizing parking and tree impacts as much as possible. And another critical element of the project is the replacement of approximately 2,000 feet of aging and undersized 6-inch water main line with a new 10-inch water main and new service laterals for all the properties, which will provide improved fire flow protection and domestic water supply for the entire neighborhood. In total, this is a great project for the community, and Public Works is excited to move it into the construction phase. Just some details about the project here. There are some existing curb and gutter and sidewalk elements that currently exist out there on the project and that will be preserved, including the curbside parking spaces, which currently is 57 curbside parking spaces. There are also, at the current moment, 27 existing off-pavement parking spaces along the project limit that will mostly be repurposed into new curb and sidewalk to provide the continuous sidewalk that's needed. In many of these areas, the roadway is not wide enough to install the new sidewalk and still allow for on-street parking, as you can see in the image here. However, this was communicated to the residents and the community during the public outreach phase of the project. And the good news is that once the project is completed, the number of permanent curbside on-street parking spaces will increase by 15%, going from 57 today to 66 curbside parking spaces at the completion of the project. As I mentioned earlier, the goal of the project was to provide sidewalk and on-street parking on both sides of the street. This graphic shows the full street section in the areas where we have the real estate and are able to provide the on-street parking as in addition to the sidewalk, which will be continuous sidewalk wherever possible. In many areas, we weren't able to preserve the parking on both sides of the street and still maintain the required 12-foot minimum lane widths as required by the Ventura County Fire Department. As far as tree impacts, the project received a protected tree permit earlier this month, And this permit is consistent with the city's oak tree preservation and protection guidelines and covers the potential encroachment of 22 protected trees along the project limits, including 4 valley oaks, 5 California sycamores, and 13 coast live oak trees. The majority of these trees are located on an adjoining private property behind the sidewalk. The main point to illustrate here is that no protected trees will be removed as part of this project, and any work at or near protected trees will be monitored by the project arborist. The city received 7 bids earlier this summer for the project, with a low bid coming in the amount of $1.5 million from Toro Enterprises in Oxnard. This was below our engineer's estimate. Toro has completed similar sidewalk projects for the city in the past, including the Westlake Boulevard sidewalk project a couple of years ago. Here's the overall project summary. The design phase of the project was entirely funded by city developer fee and water fund. Again, there's a substantial water component to the project, so there's a pretty significant water contribution. I'm glad to report the city has received a nearly $900,000 in grant funding for the project from the state's Active Transportation Program. All of the funding is in place with the construction contract, with nearly all costs being covered for the construction phase by that state grant, along with the water fund, obviously for the water line upgrades. Construction, should the project be approved tonight, construction will begin in September and will last approximately 7 months and be completed next summer. Staff and the project consultant were in direct contact with the impacted property owners during the design phase, and we acquired 2 permanent easements and several temporary easements. Community meeting was held in October 2019 to discuss all the details of the proposed project and receive input from the adjoining property owners. And last year, the project was presented to the Traffic Commission. And then lastly, during the construction phase, we're going to make use of postcards and door hangers to notify the direct residents about the upcoming activities and continue to maintain the project website, which is TO/Los Feliz. The staff recommendations are included in the staff report, and this concludes the report. Again, just to recap, this is a great project for the neighborhood that responds to the needs of the neighborhood and improves safety for both motorists and pedestrians, and upgrades the critical water infrastructure on that street at the same time. Thank you again for your time, and staff is available to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Haydari. This is a wonderful project. The community has been waiting for this for 2 decades. I'm so glad it's finally happening. And it is making it also so much safer for the residents there and the school kids. And with that, I see I have a hand up from Mayor Pro Tem Bob Engler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just a quick question. I've had several people who live in that area who are very excited to have this project come in. Can you give me an idea of what other types of comments you've received from the neighborhood up in that general area of this project? You had the community outreach in 2019, and also, was there any comments at the Traffic Commission?
Most of the comments were dealing with some of the easement acquisitions we had to obtain, temporary construction impacts, the timing, access to driveways, and some of the details that were going to be worked out as we go into the construction phase. But in addition to that, there were some comments about preserving trees and site distance and parking impacts that we were able to address and explain to everybody. And those are the main themes that really were discussed.
And you mentioned in your report that the on-street parking will actually be enhanced a little bit. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, the permanent parking spaces, which are curbside spaces, will increase from 57 to 66 at the completion of the project. There are obviously cars that are currently parking off the pavement in the location of where the sidewalk is supposed to be, that are additional spaces that are out there right now, which are, I guess you can call miscellaneous parking spaces, which are not curbside, and they're basically in the way of the future sidewalk. So as with any street that gets fully improved, those will no longer be available because there's going to be a sidewalk there. But the number of permanent, legitimate curbside parking spaces will increase.
Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Let me see. I don't have all council members on my screen. I have to switch back and forth. I don't see anything else or anyone else with a hand up. Okay, very good. Mr. Adams. And then Mr. Jones.
Well, if there weren't any further questions, I was prepared to make a motion.
Okay, let me just check with Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones,
Yes,
did you have a question?
Yeah, that was my intention also. To
Okay.
move the item.
Very good. We have a motion. No more comments or questions? And do we have?
I just want to congratulate staff on this very well put together project and the fact that they went out there and have paid roughly half of the project cost with this active transportation grant through the California Department of Transportation is really well thought out. Made the project shovel ready, and we're going to defer half those costs through that grant, and we get a lot of public benefit for this.
Indeed. Any other comments or questions? If not, then I can call for the vote. Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Adam,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Aye.
Councilmember McNamee,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Engler,
Yes.
and Mayor Bill De La Pena.
Yes.
And that motion carries 5-0.
Thank you. And the City of Thousand Oaks is very good at receiving grants for public infrastructure improvements. And I'm looking forward to the next big one, which is Willow Lane, on the horizon in a few weeks. All right. And with that, we go to a much anticipated item 10B, which is the sale and purchase agreement for Hillcrest Christian School. And this will be presented by our Economic Development Director or Manager, Mr. Haider Alawami. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. I'd like to, hold on, I haven't made any presentation lately.
I know, I haven't seen you in a while.
Yeah, it's been a long time. So if you can give me a second to share my screen, which I'm trying. I apologize for that.
It's okay.
There it is. So, okay. So the purpose of the presentation tonight is for the City Council to consider the purchase of the Hillcrest Christian School. This property is located on the southeast corner of Hillcrest Drive and Erbs Road. It contains 2 parcels, and it's approximately 4.07 acres. The current zoning on it is R3, which is multifamily residential, and the general plan designation, there are several designations on the side, and I can explain what's going on here. It's institutional, existing park, golf courses, and open space. If you look at the map on the left side, you see Estella Park to the south of the parcel, and the configuration of the parcel, which is like an L shape. Many years ago, there was no technology when we done the general plan to actually delineate the park the way it is built. So the general plan map shows a straight line where the L shape is goes straight to Erbs Road, which is, again, it's not accurate depiction of the general plan designation on the parcel, because that south portion of the Hillcrest School site in 1999, there was an application submitted and approved by the city to allow 6 modular units and grading in the area for play area. So, which means that if it was designated as open space, staff would not approve that project. So down the road, an amendment or a modification to the general plan needs to be done to reflect the actual designation of the site of institutional and delete that open space designation, which was, in staff's opinion, is an error. So with that, the building was an abandoned hospital, And in 1976, the school purchased the property and filed an application to convert the building into a school. A couple of years ago, the Hillcrest Christian School bought Pinecrest site on Wilbur Road and relocated their operation to that site. So as a result of that, in the spring of this year, the seller, the property owner, put the property on the market for sale. And in May of this year, the City Council authorized staff to start the negotiation process with the seller through their real estate broker to acquire the property. In order for us to do start negotiation, staff hired a consultant to prepare a consultation appraisal. So we have an idea, so staff can have an idea of what the fair market value of the property. And that appraisal came to the ranges between 9.3 and $11 million. So when we got that appraisal, we started negotiation with the property owner, and there's offers and counter offers. And on June 10th, a letter of interest was signed by both the seller as well as the city, establishing a $10 million tentative sale offer, which is within the range that was shown in the appraisal. So in order to help us with the process the rest of the way, with regard to actually preparing the sale, the purchase and sales agreement and other documentation to finalize the sale, we staff hired Hamner and Jewell, who has ongoing contract with the city, to help staff in that process. And that include escrow, closing escrow, and all other documents that's needed for the actual transaction. So if the City Council tonight choose to purchase this property, it will provide a great opportunity for the city to collaborate with a potential affordable housing developer of the site to provide a much needed affordable units in the city, which will meet our regional housing need and assessment obligations that required by the state. If the council just choose to go ahead and proceed with this and designate the site for affordable housing, there is an excess funds left in the successor housing fund of $1.2 million that could be used to purchase the site. The remaining balance for the purchase, which is $8.8 million, it's already in approved to your budget that the City Council approved earlier this year. And it was set aside, that money was set aside for affordable housing as well as emergency supportive housing and shelter. So the money is already in the budget and was approved by the City Council. Moving forward, and in order to attract and get in a collaboration relationship, a request for proposal qualification needs to be prepared with provisions in it that will set certain development criteria and standards for that site to make sure that whatever project that's going to be proposed is going to fit within the existing environment. At that corner, there's topography issues, there are major intersections, as well as some single family homes. So all those sensitive topics needs to be addressed, and that's through the RFQ process, we'll be able to add those criteria. Staff evaluated the project under CEQA, and since the proposal, the purchase of the property is a fiscal obligation and not a specific development project, that does not qualify the project under CEQA as a project. So therefore, there is no action required under CEQA. However, as you know, future development project will have to be evaluated under CEQA guidelines, and that's going to come down, of course, down the road. So with the recommendations, they're all in the staff report. Again, approve the purchase and sale agreement tonight, authorize expenditure of $1.2 million from the Housing Successor Fund and $8.8 million from the general fund. Additionally, approve budget appropriation and expenditure of $50,000 from general fund for both fiscal year 21, 22 and 22, 23 for maintenance and operation of the site and the property, and for the city council to provide direction to staff on the future use of the site when it comes to affordable type housing, and also authorize staff to prepare an RFP and RFQ for the property. So with that, I conclude my presentation. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Alawami. We will now go to our city manager, Drew Powers.
Thank you so much, Mayor Bill de la Pena. I just wanted to quickly note for the council and the community as a reminder how we arrived here this evening. The council set forth in your priorities back in March a desire to focus on housing, particularly shortfalls in our regional housing needs assessment. And we also heard quite a bit during the general plan process, a desire for a focus on affordable housing, and thus fueling the council's priority. With that priority, the council adopted a budget in June that established one-time funds set aside of $16 million to address housing and homelessness issues. This particular property became an opportunity, and so we brought it forward to the council for closed session discussion, and then came to where we are tonight, which is a draft purchase and sale agreement, which requires action on the part of the council before it could be finalized. Wanted to say a note of thanks just getting us to this point for Haider Alawami, Jamie Boscarino, our city attorney's staff, and Deputy City Manager Gary Rogers. In transactions like this, you have to move through due diligence at a very rapid clip, and they've dedicated significant time and resource over the summer to bring it to this point where it's an item for discussion and consideration on part of the City Council. That's it.
Thank you. And Mr. McNamee, Councilmember McNamee, you have a question? Your microphone, please. Thank you.
Yes, I do. I just want to clarify. We're looking at 17 units per acre. Is that correct?
Not at this time. The density has not been determined. Through the RFP, RFQ process and direction from the council tonight regarding if it's going to be for rent or for sale affordable housing, we will determine what potential density and the general plan designation would be. My understanding is that under the preferred land use alternative, it is neighborhood medium, which is 10 to 20 units per acre, or I need to confirm that, but with that density, again, depending on the type of housing, it might work, but that will be determined through the RFP and RFQ process.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any other questions before I go to the public speakers? None? Okay, then I will call the first public speaker, Kat Selm, followed by Marianne Van Zyl.
Hi, good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and council members. It's really good to be back with you all, and I hope you all had some good rest and relaxation last month. My name is Kat Selm, and I'm a resident of Thousand Oaks. And on behalf of the Conejo Climate Coalition, I'd just like to say that we're thrilled by the prospect of the city purchasing the Hillcrest Christian School site and collaborating with an affordable housing developer to build some much needed affordable units. If council provides this direction for staff, we'd also like to urge staff and council members to consider the benefits of an all-electric project. I'd like to remind the council that 35% of our city's greenhouse gas emissions come from buildings, the second largest source behind transportation. Reducing emissions from buildings provides one of the most feasible opportunities for cutting emissions, as transforming the entire transportation sector will prove really challenging at the local level. CCC has been researching the feasibility of all electric projects in Southern California for some time, and we've spoken directly with an affordable housing developer, National Core, on the topic of electrification. National Corps currently has 10 to 15 projects in the pipeline in Southern California, some of them at a very large scale, and everything they have planned will be all electric. One example of a newly finished all electric affordable project is Vista Verde, where they built 101 units of family housing with individual heat pump water heaters, a solar PV system with storage, and designs for future installation of EV chargers for each apartment. We've heard concerns about grid reliability when it comes to building electrification, but we'd like to address some misconceptions about who benefits from the transmission versus the distribution parts of the grid. When buildings become more energy efficient, as is required by the new Title 24, that helps long distance transmission and local distribution grid reliability by using less energy. When 21% more comes from installation of solar rooftop with battery storage, that particularly helps distribution grid reliability with the potential for greater resiliency because it cuts wildfire risk by increasing supply and management closer to the customer. In addition, the cost savings provided to tenants living in efficient buildings, especially those with solar and battery backup storage, truly make a project affordable for those struggling to pay rent and utilities. National Corps has had this to say about their Vista Verde project. It's one of the first all-electric, zero-net energy communities designed and constructed using cost-efficient technology and innovative approaches to prepare for a world of bike and pedestrian-friendly communities. Tim Kohut, National Corps' Director of Sustainable Design, had this to say in a Cal Matters article on affordable housing. If National Corps can make all-electric buildings work with affordable housing budgets where every dollar counts, anyone can do it. We'd like to urge the city to follow this shining example and build a project that all residents of the Conejo Valley can be proud of, one that's truly affordable, resilient, healthy, green, and that sets the pace for the rapid emission reductions that we all need to live on a habitable Earth. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Next speaker is Marianne Van Zyl, followed by Gordon Clint.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and council members. I will be very brief. I just would like to speak in support of the purchase of this property for affordable housing. If the city relies on developers for the development of affordable housing, there's money that just goes into the pocket of the developers that should be used to provide more housing for our residents. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker, Gordon Clint, followed by Jackson Piper.
Yes, my name is Gordon Clint, and I've been a homeowner in Newbury Park for many years, and also as a member of the Chalice Unitarian Universalist Fellowship and the Conejo Climate Coalition. I care deeply about both social justice and climate justice. That is why I support the purchase of this property and really hope it is a step towards building the much-needed affordable workforce housing. Our city must find ways to buy more property like this so we can really meet the need that is so intense. We must also pass an inclusionary housing ordinance to make sure builders include enough new housing that is actually affordable. I believe that it is a moral and practical necessity to make it possible for more people who work in our city to be able to live in our city. Less commuting will allow employees to spend more time with their families and reduce greenhouse gas pollution. It will also be another step towards our city's goal of improving equity, diversity, and inclusion. So I'm really excited about this purchase, and I hope it leads to the kind of things we need. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up, we have Jackson Piper, followed by Tim Gallagher.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the City Council. My name is Jackson Piper. I am a resident of unincorporated Newbury Park and a member of both the Thousand Oaks Livability Group and Ventura County YIMBY. I'm here tonight to express how thrilled I am of the prospect of the city purchasing this site as a site for affordable housing. And to ask the City Council to fully support this purchase. I would like the City Council to see this as an opportunity to place a large number of units for people who would not normally be able to afford to live in Thousand Oaks or who are currently struggling to live in Thousand Oaks within easy walking distance of the shops and services of Thousand Oaks Boulevard. Also with concurrent access to the Thousand Oaks transit system. and potentially with improvements in the transit system and improvements in our bicycle facilities throughout the city, potentially access throughout the city as well with those means of travel. I know that the density was mentioned as potentially being between 10 and 20 units per acre. Given that this is potentially a city project on what will be city-owned land, I strongly encourage the city to think beyond just what is in the general plan land use designation for this property, and imagine how you can comfortably fit a larger number of people than just 20 units per acre will allow, whether it be with apartments or row houses or some other kind of dense housing configuration that can still fit in with our city's character. I want to point out that in Mesa, Arizona, hardly an icon of sustainable development and density, there's a project that has been proposed and is underway that is going to be completely car-free. It does this by a combination of having access to a light rail station nearby, which of course we won't have, but we do have our bus system that may hopefully expand in the future. And it offers what I believe is the solution, which is to have a car share system on site so that cars, instead of being individually owned and individually garaged on site, serve the entire community at the time that they are needed by those members of the community living on the site, and then go on to serve someone else instead of just taking up space there. So I strongly encourage the City of Thousand Oaks to support this purchase and to look at alternative ways of making the best use of space on the site that they can to house as many people that need housing in Thousand Oaks that they can. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next, Tim Gallagher.
Thank you, Madam Mayor and Council. I am Tim Gallagher. I live in Simi Valley. I'm coming to you tonight as the president of Homes for Generations of Ventura County. We are a nonprofit community land trust designed to create affordable housing for sale in Ventura County. There are more than 225 community land trusts around the county, but we were the first formed in Ventura County. What we do is make homes affordable by owning the land. We separate the cost of the land from the cost of the home. The homeowner leases the land from us and takes out a loan to buy the house. This cuts the price of the house roughly in half. I want to commend this council for taking this step and considering this action tonight. This is what your community and communities all across Southern California are asking for, cities to make housing affordable. And this council and this staff is doing that through this effort on the Hillcrest property. It's a great move by your council. And I want to assure you that when this RFP goes out, Homes for Generations of Ventura County and our partners in the affordable housing development community will be right there answering, and hopefully we can put somewhere around 55 to 60 homes on that property and create homes for sale for people in Ventura County. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And our last speaker is Jared Smits. Do we have Jared Smits? He's joining, okay. Good evening, Mr. Smits.
Yeah, I'm just observing. I wasn't intending on speaking. I'm sorry about the confusion.
Thank you very much. So Mr. Gallagher was our last speaker. I appreciate that. Certainly, we've heard now from our public speakers, and staff is available for questions. I would like to say that before we go into discussion, that the City of Thousand Oaks, along with many other cities in California, had relied on funding through the redevelopment agency for many years. But the redevelopment agency was dissolved in 2012. Our last public housing project was with the Ventura County Area Housing Agency on Hillcrest, and that I believe was in 2013. But over the years, while the RDA was in effect, we had received $58 million, and with those $58 million, we provided 1,114 affordable units for Thousand Oaks. When that flow of funding was cut off 9 years ago, we, along with many other cities, were left holding the bag. How were we going to provide now affordable housing with that important source gone? So it is really remarkable that after 9 years that we are sitting here tonight considering this proposal. There aren't all that many cities in California able to do this, but thanks to the fiscal health and soundness of the city of Thousand Oaks, we are at the precipice of doing something that many people are wanting, and that is to provide housing for our hardworking families in our community. I'm personally very excited about this, and just wanted to say that there has been so much discussion about this affordable housing, but one has to recognize many factors contribute to the housing crisis. Income inequality is a big factor of that. And so, and certainly the value of land. And tonight's proposal is not cheap. It is very expensive because land in California is expensive. So I'm going to look at my colleagues now, and I see that hand is up by Councilmember McNamee.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have just two observations and comments. One is that the current general plan lists at a maximum of 20 units per acre or 80 on that particular site. And the value of a piece of property is based on how much revenue can be generated from that particular site. As was illustrated in the presentation, is that there were several private developers looking at that site, but because it was reduced, the limited number of units that could be built, they offered a lower price to purchase that particular piece of property and develop it. We're looking at 20 units per acre right now under the general plan as a maximum. And I would encourage our council here to hold to that, because if it's increased the number of units per acre, that means that the seller right now has lost a tremendous amount of money that should have been under consideration if it was a higher number. That's the first point. Second is that the lazy policymaker looks at moving taxpayer money from one end of the economy to the other to suit whatever problem presents itself, in this case, affordable housing. My challenge is that let's look at another avenue of making housing more affordable, reducing the price to find out why is it so expensive. And yes, we can point to the land value and demand in a wonderful community. But when a developer tells me in Thousand Oaks, it's 5 to 6 years to develop a property from the time they take possession of that piece of land to the time they get occupancy, it's 5 to 6 years down the road. Carrying costs are $17,000 per unit. That means per apartment, per condo, per townhome, per house. That's $85,000 on a 5-year project. So if we really want to talk about affordability and make it affordable, let's be enlightened policymakers. Let's see what we can do to make government more efficient. Because as I talk to developers who are doing projects in other states, they're speaking to 2 to 3 years to get a project done in other states that are more efficient government to move it through. When we're talking 5 to 6 years, $85,000 cut in half or more is a pretty significant reduction to make it affordable for everybody, and government doesn't have to use taxpayer dollars to provide affordable housing. So my recommendation is that we start looking at how we can make the process more streamlined, more efficient, to reduce the time it takes from the time property is taken by the developer and developed and they get occupancy from a 5-year type plan down to a 2 to 3 years, as other states and other governments are doing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Bob Engler has his hand up.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I too am excited that this project is before us tonight. I think that, as you pointed out, when there was redevelopment agency money that we could dedicate to these types of needed aspects of our city, we were able to do quite a bit of work with it. Since it has gone away, we've had to rely on some embedded affordable housing within projects. And as we noted, has not been a lot of projects for the last 6-8 years that we can point to and add affordable housing within it. The missing part of some of our affordable housing, though, I think, is we have some affordable housing through our partner, Mini Mansions, who does a great job. But the missing part is a stair ladder for people to have below market rate for purchase. And I think if we can provide that type of ladder for people to become perhaps go out and get their own house at market rate sometime down the line, I think that would be a way that we could fill a niche within our community that doesn't exist right now. So my thought is that we should approve the purchase of this location, and of course have it monitored and worked with other partners to be able to give that missing link of affordability to some of our members.
Thank you. Councilmember Jones.
Yeah, Madam Mayor, I would like to also agree with what is proposed tonight. You know, we keep getting these mandates from the state to build more and more affordable housing. And as I think Councilman Engler just alluded to, if you make that part of a project, the developer is still going to have to make a profit. And if he designates a certain number of units as affordable, he raises the density way up. I think the proposal originally, if I'm not mistaken, for the Christmas tree or pumpkin patch lot, whatever it is, on Teal Boulevard was like 50 units an acre. Well, I mean, 50 units an acre. And at that, these units for affordability that he was proposing are very tiny studio type units. So I've always maintained and still do that we need to do what the city has done in the past through the redevelopment agency, and that is get financially involved in the project. And I think we've been very prudent financially, that we have the wherewithal to do this. We will be doing a great community service to people who want to live here. That we will be providing affordable housing by providing the land for the development. As I say, this would be at a density. I don't know what the optimum density is to have a unit, a development that is easy to live in, that has enough space for the homes, that has access, and it's a wonderful location because it has access to Estella Park, which I might note parenthetically is the original park of the Conejo Recreation and Park District. Now that they have 50 of them, that was the first one. So I think this particular project is in a great location. I do not think that there should be any problem with the immediate neighborhood. You have an apartment house across Herbs. You have a vacant lot across the street to the north. There are single family homes directly to the east on Glenwood. I would hope they would welcome this project. So I think it's really a win-win project. I think it allows us to show the state that we're doing our best for affordable housing, and at the same time that we are making a housing development in a suitable environment with a park next door, and hopefully at a density that will not be anywhere near the 50 units per acre that was proposed for Teal Boulevard. So I think it's a great project, and I'd like to thank the staff for bringing it to us and for the city manager and his predecessors for help putting us in a financial position that we're able to do this. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. Councilmember Adam has his hand up, but I wanted to first propose that we break up the votes according to the recommendations on item 10B. 1, 2, 3, and 4 really deal with grant authorization or the purchase, whereas 5 and 6, and in particular 5, deal more with the decision and discussion of future use and the policy direction. So as we go to Councilmember Adam, perhaps we can move to vote on 1, 2, 3, and 4, and then do 5 and 6 separately. Mr. Adam.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, for years now, we've talked about the lack of redevelopment agency funds and how that's hampered us with affordable housing here in Thousand Oaks. So now we finally have a chance to make up for that dearth of funds by, thanks to good fiscal stewardship on our part, be able to put some money forward to purchase this land and give people a chance to get a foothold here in the city. And of course, it's not like we haven't done that in the interim. When we did lose redevelopment agency funds, we've had a number of projects in front of us, but you know, the first step with any affordable project is you have to vote for it. And that's why the Kmart site, the Nazar Beacon site, the 299 site are, in my opinion, so important because they do embed affordable units within those projects. And any organization, no matter how great they are, can always be more efficient in processing things. So, I mean, I'm all for that. But the first step is we have to vote for the project. And after that, we can always try to be more efficient to get that project up out of the ground. This particular project, though, the ones I just mentioned were all rentals. This one is really important in my mind because it gives people a chance to own, to build equity in the community. And that's how, I mean, we all have our equity tied up in the homes we live in. Other people need to have that chance too, so we can chip away at that economic wall that's around the city with these high home prices and give people a chance to start to accrue some wealth in their lives. And that's why I would definitely be in favor of having these units be for sale. I'd like to give staff that direction as they go out with that RFP and RFQ request. And I guess I can make a motion and what'd you say, Mayor? You wanted to split them up?
Yeah, if you could just make a motion for 1, 2, 3, and 4, because that deals with authorizing the money to purchase, and then we can talk about the future use, whether sale, condos, townhomes,
right,
whatever, for points 5 and 6. So go ahead, if you wouldn't mind
All right,
moving
well, then I'll
1
move
through 4.
4.
We have a motion to approve 1 through 4. Can we vote, Madam Clerk?
Councilmember Adam,
Yes.
Councilmember Jones,
Aye.
Councilmember McNamee,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Engler,
Yes.
and Mayor Bill De La Pena.
Yes.
And that motion carries 5-0.
Thank you so much. That is a unanimous vote, and we can now discuss item 5, and it sounds the council is in favor of making this affordable for sale. I would be very much in agreement with that.
Yeah, I can make that motion. I think that's the right way to go on this particular site.
Yes,
Hold on,
excuse me,
Madam
we do have 2 hands up, Mayor Pro Tem Engler, and then Councilmember McNamee.
I was going to say that would be my preference on this property, that we do use it as I mentioned before, that laddering effect for people who are coming out of rentals for purchase, and then be able to share that equity down the line with the next person coming through. That would be my preference because I think it adds that laddering effect that we're missing in town. I'd also, I mean, I appreciate the people from the Climate Coalition saying that we should look at if we can all do it to be a greenest building we can build. But primarily, I want to make sure that we have the ability to house some people with an equity balance going their way as well.
Thank you, Councilmember McNamee.
Two items. One is the Green Coalition fails to realize that in the 1960s, electricity cost less than natural gas. Homes went over to being all electric. Result is that when electric prices rose, natural gas actually became less expensive and kept money in people's pockets. I am of the opinion that it should be up to the open market, the developer, to figure out if they want to offer both electric and or natural gas to help keep costs down for them and not enrich the electric producers. This idea that we're going to be burning up in 10 years, that was supposed to have occurred 10 years ago. And to us, those of us that experienced what happened in Texas, and you see what occurred there, that their entire grid went down when they had a snowstorm and their solar panels didn't work or their windmills were frozen. Electricity wasn't being produced and they were stuck. So I'm of the opinion, let the free market decide which way they want to go. And my preference is to include both if I were the developer, so that way the person can switch back and forth depending on which is most economical for them. Second point is that government is not meant to be a charity. That's up to the service groups, the nonprofits, the religious, faith-based charities. When we offer this property as a form of ability to, quote, get their foot in home ownership, that's not our job as a government. Our job is to provide a framework upon which the market can work. I illustrated in my comments before that builders, developers, contractors, trades, and residents are telling me that it is cost prohibitive to build here in Thousand Oaks. And if they do build, our inefficiency of our planning, building, and Public Works Department is driving up the cost of affordable housing here in Thousand Oaks. We need to become more efficient as a government. It's no fault of the staff that's involved there or the management. We just need to reorganize and do things differently so that way we can do it in 1, 2, 3 years that other states are doing it instead of 5 and 6 years. When I hear a developer tell me they spend $500,000 on redoing plans and engineering designs to finally get a project approved, that's wrong. And that's driving up the price of housing. So you can say demand, you can say land prices, you can say whatever you want. But when that developer who you think is making lots of money is not really making lots of money, in fact, many times they're negative and won't see a return on their money for 20 years because of the delays our government, our city government, our planning, building, and the project works are imposing upon these developers and contractors coming in. Many of them are bootlegging. They're not even going to pull permits to do remodeling and redevelopment because they're tired of the process, and they're paying fees that are really exorbitant. So my thought is that this should not be homes for sale. If you want to do them as apartments for low-income housing to satisfy our RHNA numbers, that I can live with. But if people were to purchase these homes, there's not going to be a tiered ladder system where they can pass that on to somebody else. That's 30 years down the road, and that's going to be a long way down. How long are these people going to be in those homes? Are they any motivation to move out of the homes to another home that they actually come in with the down payment? And then what about those people that actually saved to live in Thousand Oaks, but didn't make the low number that it would qualify for them to move into these homes? They're homeless right now because we are doing this by allowing government to weaponize government to provide affordable housing for people that make under a certain income to buy that house. What about those people that are saving right now to move into Thousand Oaks? If we make government more efficient, we will drive down the price, get out of the way of the developers, allow them to do what they do, then everyone will have affordable housing and we wouldn't have to be a charity as a government. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Mayor Pro Tem Engler, please.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. If I can borrow my colleague's soapbox for just 1 second. The I don't look at government as charity either. There's a need in town in the same way that there's needs for parks, the same way there are needs for streets, the same way that there's a need for proper management of our city. One of those needs is to address housing issues within our town. That's as valid a need as any other need that we can put forward. Therefore, by using this as the ability to, as you mentioned, meet some of our RENA needs, but it also will, if it's done in a for sale type environment, of the type I've heard that the land trusts and those types of organizations use, it will provide a ladder. It will provide the ability for people to move into regular housing. And that's, to me, that's a valid need for our city to provide. It has nothing to do with charity. It has to do with making a better city. Thank you. I'll give you the soapbox back.
And maybe we'll give it to Mr. Jones now before we go to City Manager Drew Powers.
Are you you're not calling on me?
No, I'm calling on you, Mr. Jones, and then Mr. Powers.
Well, I don't intend to preach a sermon here, but here's what I think. I came here many years ago. At that time, your teacher, cop, fireman, young professional, people in construction, people just with typical incomes could come here. And you had to show you made a third of the total price of the house per year in order to buy a house, predicated on the idea that people should spend no more than about 30, maybe 33% of their income on housing, so they'd have the balance for food, clothing, transportation, medicine, whatever else they needed. What has happened? What has happened is that Thousand Oaks has become a very desirable place to live. So the land values have gone up tremendously. So we're not what was envisioned as a typical community 50 years ago. We're a community where, because of the high cost of land, if you want to have something approachable, affordable housing, where teachers and, police and fire people in what we would consider occupations that would, lead to housing for their families. We're out of the game. Could you imagine trying to earn a third of what would be the lowest cost house in Thousand Oaks, to earn that per year? What would be the lowest cost? $600,000-$700,000? Is anybody trying to buy a house make $250,000 a year? So he could just, even at that, you'd be spending more than 30% on the monthly payments, because you still have a balance of $400,000 or $500,000. In short, the only way you're going to have affordable housing is if the city or some governmental entity aids in the financing of the land, and that's what we're looking at here. Yeah, I would too, getting back to the basic question that Al raised, I would be in favor also of selling townhouses or condominiums rather than rental units. But I would also say that to keep this affordable housing, people who, when they buy a condo, you're going to have to sign a covenant to say that they will not immediately go into market rate, whatever the traffic will bear. They're going to have to say that they're limiting their resale number to a certain percentage to keep the unit affordable. We don't want them affordable just for the first owner, in case that owner moves to Chicago or something. We want it to be affordable for the second owner and the third owner and so forth. So I think they will get, as Al said, a small stake when they sell the unit, but they would not get the same stake as if they could just take off any limit and salt or whatever the traffic would bear. But, you know, I'd like to just say a word to Councilman McNamee. I believe in the free enterprise system too. But I think there are certain things that you have to carve out an exception for, you know. And I do believe that we should encourage developers, and wherever we can make the process streamlined. You know, we don't want to tie up their money forever, the work of their unit, their company forever. I'd like to see everything as streamlined as possible too. But as I say, I think we need to make an exception to the normal free enterprise system for housing in Thousand Oaks. So I'm 100% for the project, and I too would favor condos, ownership of the new housing rather than renting.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. We have,
Mayor, I'd like to, if I may, before we go to the city manager, follow up. with,
Mr. McNamee, if you would wait your turn, please. I will go to Mr. Drew Powers first and then to you. But I wanted to well, go ahead. There was something else I wanted to say, but go ahead, Mr. Powers.
It's okay, Mayor. I was going to make some sort of final comments just to make sure there was clarity. So Councilmember McNamee can go ahead.
Go ahead, Mr. McNamee.
That's why I kind of interrupted, because he usually wraps everything up for us. Just to come back to the concept that people is going to be a temporary living situation where they actually own and then they move out. I don't hear of anything that requires that you're there for a 5-year or 10-year process and then you have to move out and buy a house elsewhere or find any other living arrangement. So that's, again, not built into or baked into this plan there, that they buy a house and they'll move out after a certain period of time after they sell the unit to someone else at a low income level. Again, this is most likely going to be permanent housing for 30 years for many of the people that move in there, in my opinion. Second, I've always been very respectful and courteous and appreciate my other council members' comments. Disparaging comments that I've heard here regarding my soapbox, I would ask that the courtesy be extended to me as well as what I've extended to you, and highly respect all of your opinions. And we may disagree on points of view, but I think you're all wonderful people. And again, the disparaging comments are not appreciated. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. McNamee. No, we want to be respectful, and that includes staff as well. Calling staff inefficient or someone else lazy policymakers is not helpful. But Mr. Drew Powers, I do have some comments to make. If we leave it up to the developers, we will not ever have affordable housing, whether that is apartments or whether it is single-family homes. Very few developers lose their shirts. Thousand Oaks has been a very lucrative location for most developers, and they are in the industry because it is lucrative. And the only way that we can actually provide housing where families can build equity is if we purchase land or work with a nonprofit, and therefore we can save a ton of money and make the homes affordable. So I believe that in terms of the details as to how long does someone get to stay in the house, is something that obviously staff will have to work with whoever will be chosen to be our provider or our builder. Habitat for Humanity, for example, has a house here on Hillcrest Drive, and a family of 4 moved in. They didn't stay all that long in that house, if I remember correctly. If memory serves me well. It is, I think, in its 2nd or 3rd ownership now, and this was built about 20 years ago. So people earn money. Everybody is trying to save money for a house, whether they're living with 2 other families in an apartment, or if it's someone who is renting elsewhere. Everybody is trying to save money to make the American dream come true. And I think that if we are able to do that, to accommodate that, it is a good thing, and without needing to make a profit on it. And I think that is what is important. So I believe that the details that Councilmember McNamee is concerned about, and understandably so, will certainly be part of the discussion and the negotiations with our provider. Mr. Powers.
Thank you so much, Mayor Bill de la Pena, and appreciate the good, healthy discussion on the part of the City Council. I just wanted to offer a couple of thoughts. One, just for the Council to contemplate for a moment, we've heard very clearly on the preference for an ownership structure on the site. Also want to know whether you would like to provide an opportunity or an alternate to consider hybrid. That will obviously affect the type of proposers that would come in. If you want a hybrid, would mean a combination of rental and ownership. So it doesn't mean that you would have to go in any particular direction there, but it would certainly widen the lens on the type of proposer. But that's obviously up to the pleasure of the council, but we wanted to get that feedback now. Just quickly to address timing issues, because I think it's always a relevant point. Government and basically any enterprise, private or public, can always be more efficient, and we're striving to do that every single day. We have a tremendous team in our Public Works Department and our Planning and Community Development Department. A team that is dealing with record volumes and some tremendous staffing challenges at the moment, as most industries are. But just as a point of reference for the community and for the council, last two sort of large visibility projects that were out there, 1710 Thousand Oaks Boulevard was approved by the Planning Commission in February of 17 and was occupied fully constructed and occupied in August or September of 2020. The 299 Thousand Oaks Boulevard project was approved by the City Council in September of 2018 and is now well under construction just 3 years later. So there's always anecdotes and portions. There's always opportunities to be more efficient and more effective, but those are just two recent examples. We haven't had a lot of construction recently, but two recent examples that fall right into that 3-year window. So if the council has any additional feedback, we'd welcome it in the RFP. So please feel free to provide that. And if you want to provide that additional component on hybrid nature.
Thank you, Mr. Powers. I appreciate that. The feedback also that I would like to add is whoever will be chosen for this, consider the sustainability, what do you call it, equipment or design. We will have our climate action plan coming up, hopefully here soon. We will have an update this fall. And certainly we want to be forward-thinking and forward-looking in terms of becoming more sustainable. So as was mentioned with one particular project, Vista Verde, if that can be replicated here in Thousand Oaks, it would be great without breaking the bank. And so that should definitely be considered. So I want to make that also one of the focal points. And with that, I know you mentioned hybrid, but I see a couple of hands up still. One is Mr. Jones, and then the other, or Mr. Adam, I think you had yours up first, and then we go to Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I would like to finish up with my motion, but I would just say that as it's been said already, and as I said myself, any organizations, whether it's private or public, wants to be as efficient as possible. And certainly we want to foster an environment here in the city where we welcome building, we welcome residential, we welcome housing. And I know that's on the minds of our community development department every day. But that's kind of a long-term ongoing battle. We need housing now. We need housing now. And developers can provide some of the housing we're looking for when it comes to rental, because we can require or they can volunteer to add affordable housing in a rental situation. Kmart, for example, 50 units of affordable rental housing. Nazarbekian, I think it was 15 or 20. As Mr. Powers mentions, 299's got about 15. So that's good. That's good. But when it comes to developers offering affordable housing for sale, that's a whole nother ballgame. Because the cost of land is so expensive and all the ancillary costs that go with it, it's almost that, you know, if we want to give people a chance to own in the city, we have to step in. And that's what we have the opportunity to do this evening in a small way. I mean, we're talking maybe 40 to 60 units on this piece of property. But I think it's a good thing for us to do. And I think it will give some people some real opportunities. And the hybrid approach, I don't know, it doesn't really appeal to me, to be honest with you. We have a lot of rental going up and we're looking at some more down the road. But this is a unique opportunity to get some for sale properties, to build equity for people. That's how we all got where we are today, right, folks? We build equity through home ownership. I mean, I bought my first house back in, I don't know, 1980. It was like 140,000. Forget it. That's impossible these days. Absolutely impossible. Things have changed. So I would like to proceed with my motion, which was to ask staff to pursue the for sale option here with an RFP/Q and look particularly at the land trust opportunity. I think this could be actually a model for land trusts all across the state, really, if we do it right. And that's kind of exciting in itself. Here's Thousand Oaks setting the pace again. And I think, is 5 and 6 both in the same vein?
Five deals with the giving staff direction regarding the desired future of the site, and it sounds that it will be for sale. And then number 6 is to authorize the RFQ.
I think that's what I just did. What's 6?
To authorize the RFQ.
Oh, all right. Well, then let's authorize the direction be for sale, particularly in a land trust format, and also authorize the RFP/Q.
Yes, and that it will also follow that our own sustainability plan and climate action plan that will be part, in fact, will be made official in the not too distant future, obviously. So that is important as well.
Yeah, I mean, that's not really part of my motion, but that I guess will ultimately apply, right?
Well, let's see. Let me ask Mr. Powers.
Can you rephrase that, Mayor, please?
Any new development in the city of Thousand Oaks after we approve our climate action plan will have to comply with our sustainability plan, yes?
To the extent that there are firm policies and in that plan, you know, City Attorney Tracy Noonan can weigh in on that. But obviously, to the extent that there are firm policies and not just recommendations, then any development would have to adhere to it, just like it would public or private development.
I think it's premature. We don't even have that plan developed yet. Really, I get what everybody's saying about the climate, and yeah, it's important. But for now, I think I just like my motion to be as it is.
What I can say is that, again, you know, we're working on the climate action plan and the general plan policies and principles, you know, right now. We do have Title 25 that's already been, you know, incorporated and is already being applied to existing building. But we can also, as part of the RFQ process, we can include, you know, when we're asking for proposers to present project opportunities, we can include a factor or some type of criteria where we're factoring any type of sustainability components that are put into the project as one of the factors that we look at as part of our evaluation.
I think that's a good idea. Yeah.
All right, then I'll amend it with, you know, can we simply say with an eye to sustainability in the RFP/Q? How would that be?
So well, that will go with 5 and 6 when you just made the motion. So we will do that. And thank you very much for including that, Councilmember Adam. Mr. Jones, you have your hand up.
I was going to move 5 and 6.
Okay.
Do I understand that the current motion is for 5 and 6, and that in 5, it demonstrates a preference for sale units rather than rental units?
Absolutely, that is correct.
Yes, okay.
Correct.
And the number will be determined after the RFP, RFQ, to see how many units we can fit on there. The more, the merrier. All right, so we have a motion, and that includes everything from for sale to the RFQ, RFP authorization to also giving, considering the sustainability. And I will call for a vote.
Councilmember Adam?
Yes.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember McNamee?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Engler?
Yes.
And Mayor Bill De La Pena?
Yes.
And that motion carries 4-1 with Councilmember McNamee voting no.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I wanted to also show Mr. Councilmember McNamee. So when you break up votes like that, you give council members individual options to vote yes or no rather than to vote on the entire package. So I think that is a good way of doing things as well. All right. So congratulations to everyone. This is a historic vote as we're spending a lot of money. However, it is for a very good cause, namely making affordable or housing affordable for our hardworking families in Thousand Oaks, and I look forward to the final project. Thank you so much to staff for working on this since the beginning of the year, and you really worked on this, and I am very grateful for that. Thank you. All right, and with that, we are going to item 10C, which is our Community Grants Program. And I believe this will be presented by our Interim Library Director, Melissa Hurtado.
Yes, thank you, Mayor De La Pena. Let me go ahead and share my screen here. Okay, great. So good evening, Mayor De La Pena and council members. I'm with you tonight to propose community grant options for funds that were previously approved in the adopted general fund budget. Difficulties, here we go. At the goal setting session earlier this year, the City Council listed post-pandemic community recovery through various strategic one-time investments as a priority. During this year's budget process, City Council moved this priority forward by generously approving $1 million to be used for community grants. These are not CARES Act funds, but rather discretionary general fund monies. The Finance Audit Committee met, and based on the number of anticipated applicants and the needs for each area, it was recommended that $700,000 be allocated to social services organizations and $300,000 to local arts organizations. This 70-30 split was carefully considered and was decided upon based on the services provided and the number of organizations that are in need of assistance. There is no question that the nonprofit social services agencies in Thousand Oaks stepped up during this pandemic. They provided food, clothing, medical services, COVID supplies, and helped folks financially who struggled to pay rent, fix their car, or pay utility bills. While they were doing all of this amazing work, their financial resources were strained. With the inability to host traditional events, many of our local arts organizations shifted into virtual or outdoor venues, but their income streams suffered as a consequence of the pandemic. City Council recognizes the importance of arts in the community and has long supported their efforts, including it as a City Council goal and making it a priority to re-energize cultural arts through strategic investments. Prior to tonight's recommended grant programs, City Council made significant investment in tackling the immediate needs faced in the community. Last year, City Council generously set aside funds for a residential rental assistance program, and over $878,000 was distributed to landlords for past due rent payments. Also, funds from community events grants and sports facilities grants were reallocated to provide assistance to social services groups specifically that were providing COVID relief efforts. Also, funds were set aside from that reallocation to provide a rental credit for resident companies and nonprofit groups to help them reestablish their performances in our theaters. City Council has a long-standing history in supporting both social services and arts organizations. In addition to the one-time support mentioned in the previous slide, The city provides $100,000 in annual grants to social services organizations. Also, 2 of our resident companies utilize office space at the Civic Arts Plaza, paying only $1 a year in rent. Resident companies also receive a 35% discount on rental in the theaters. At the July 6, 2021 City Council meeting, a $35,000 grant was approved to assist senior concerns in replacing their air conditioning and the repair of their roof in order for them to meet the health and safety standards to reopen their building for programming. The $35,000 was deducted from the intended $700,000, leaving $665,000 for social services organizations. The Community Funding Review Committee will review and make recommendation on grant funding. Grant funds will not be tied to any specific program or service and can be used more broadly than with previous grant programs. Funding will be equally distributed amongst qualified applicants. We anticipate up to 30 organizations qualifying for a grant, and under this assumption, each organization may receive from about $22,000 to over $33,000. These numbers may vary dependent on the number of qualified applicants received. The $300,000 grants for the arts organizations would be administered by TO Arts. While the grant amounts for each organization have not been determined at this point, it is anticipated that due to their sizable operations, our 3 resident companies would be granted an amount significantly larger than the other organizations. In addition to the resident companies, there are 15 to 20 organizations that may benefit from funding. So the recommendation for you tonight is to authorize a social services grant program in the amount of $665,000 and approval of an expenditure of $300,000 payable to TO Arts for distribution to local arts organizations. I am available for questions along with Jonathan Surratt, Cultural Affairs Director, Jamie Boscarino, Finance Director, and Francine Spriegel, Community Services Analyst.
Thank you very much for this presentation. We do have several speakers on this item. And I was just curious to know how staff came up with this allocation or the percentage or the recommendation.
Certainly. We actually had this discussion at the Finance Audit Committee, and after discussing the sheer number of applicants and the basic need for the social services programs, and then also the number of potential applicants and the need in the arts organizations, based on the numbers, that's just where we came up with the figure.
Were the arts organizations consulted with this at all, or were the social services organizations also consulted, or did you just look at the applications?
Madam Mayor, if I may, with the council's community support fund, the Finance Audit Committee contemplated a number of the components that came forward to the council as part of the budget process. In doing so, they looked at the volume of, recognizing this was a post-pandemic recovery package, looked at the volume of nonprofits and the numbers of those and the numbers of arts organizations and the support that have been provided throughout, and made a recommendation. But it is simply that, a recommendation. The recommendation is here before the entire council for you to adjust or advance.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Let's hear from our speakers. And the first one is Natalia Staneva, followed by Michael Christie. Natalia Staneva is the Executive Director of New West Symphony, and Michael Christie is the Music Director. Mr. Adam, did you have a question? Your hand is up, but your microphone is off.
Having sat on the, you can hear me, right?
Yes, now we can.
Having sat on the Finance Audit Committee, I just wanted to say that the way we considered it was the fact that there's roughly 28 social service agencies in town that would be eligible for these funds. And the thought was we wanted to be somewhere around maybe $25,000 a piece for them. We had $1 million to work with. And, we also wanted to get the biggest possible impact we could across the broad community. And so that worked out to roughly 2/3 social service, 1/3 arts.
Thank you. First one, we have Natalia Staneva, followed by Maestro Michael Christie.
Thank you, Mayor and City Council members. And I also wanted to thank Ms. Hurtado for the report. Before the pandemic, I used to say that I was as CEO of the New West Symphony. I represented the largest performing arts organization in Thousand Oaks besides TO Arts. I feel a certain responsibility to share with you some data that is relevant to the community grants discussion tonight. Last month, Ventura County Arts Council and an arts consultant conducted the survey to assess the impact of the pandemic on our local arts organizations. Almost 55% of 31 VC arts organizations that responded to survey defined the damage due to COVID as severe, and the economic impact is estimated to be $17 million. The cumulative losses in Thousand Oaks alone, between only 5 arts organizations who actually had staff to respond to the survey, were close to $3 million. We have a lot more organizations who did not respond to the survey due to their temporary closures. You have supported us for the last 26 years. I'd like to thank Jonathan Surratt, the new Director of Cultural Affairs, for responding to our crisis and opening the theater to film our concerts from October 2020, as well as gave opportunities for 5-star theatricals and Pacific Festival Ballet to perform. He provided guidance on film permits and protocols, and we had the virtual season. For many musicians, that recording session in October was the first time they made music together. We even made Spectrum One news. When most symphony orchestras simply shut their doors, we carried on and brought music to our patrons. As Gary Wardig mentioned in the public comments, we saw our revenues decline by $1 million, but we continued to hold online fundraising events. But without federal and foundation grants, we would have not been able to do what we did, continue to be vibrant and important to our community. Let's face it, we all have questions how to return safely to the crowded venues. Do we sell every seat? Can we afford not to sell every seat? When we send our subscription renewals, would public come back? What is the role of the digital performances if we decide to be socially distanced and cannot accommodate everyone? How do we survive in the next 12 months while rebuilding our audiences? While there are a lot of questions, the answer is you. Thanks to you, the Symphony had a venue and an office and the leftover theater credits. Your support has allowed us to endure, and it is your support that will allow us to emerge from this national nightmare. While we recognize that this is a time when there are many worthwhile causes asking for support, we ask you to please consider increasing support for the arts at this critical time of need. We can see the light at the end of the tunnel, and your generous support will help ensure that the glow from that light will illuminate us all. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Maestro Michael Christie.
Good evening, Mayor Bila de la Pena, council members. My name is Michael Christie, Artistic and Music Director of the New West Symphony, and we have called the Civic Arts Plaza our home for 26 years and currently enjoy being your resident company of the Bank of America Performing Arts Center. Council members, like you and the services you provide to our Thousand Oaks families, New West Symphony was challenged but resolute over the past 17 months to comfort and inspire our fellow residents and patrons. We used the potential of technology and raised funds to not only employ our own artists and staff, but also to employ your amazing technical and creative teams in the Kavli Theater over several weekends. We created many hours of online programming that shined a light on your beautiful theater and accomplished our goal of providing comfort and inspiration from the youth who continued their musical instruction with us via Zoom to the elderly who found refuge in the world of Zoom and produced content. With the help of our local and regional musicians and the generous collaborations of 17 local community partners, we shared 6 important cultures, their music, and traditions with our own community and viewers in 55 countries around the world. As we embraced our community neighbors from generally underrepresented sectors in the music arena, We learned so much about their life experiences and family traditions, and we embraced a goal of diversity, equity, and inclusion, employing our orchestra along 27 guest artists, 2/3 of whom represented the BIPOC community. But it is you who has provided us with a constant and comfortable home throughout this pandemic. Our isolation was softened and made tolerable as we created a connection to music and to those community partners with whom we collaborated, and to our beautiful theaters, of which we can all be so proud. From our local town of Thousand Oaks, we showed the world that we can celebrate Western musical traditions because of the many cultures that influence and inspire Western classical music and all the music of the world. Thank you to the Cultural Affairs Department and to you for working with us to open the Kavli Theater safely so we could create these beautiful presentations and proudly tell the world that Thousand Oaks is the home of creativity and ambition. As we now set our sights on a return to live performances, we understand that questions will inevitably face us as our community demands even more creativity in order to provide safe entertainment. Our local arts community is assisting us as we reach to younger and more diverse patrons and families to build the audiences of the coming 5 to 15 years and beyond. And your New West Symphony is committed, with your assistance, to nourishing the spirit of our growing community and being a diamond in the crown of our region. Thank you for your support, and good evening.
Thank you, Maestro Christie. Next, we have the chair of the New West Symphony Board, Dwight Brown.
Thank you, Mayor Billy LaPena and City Council members. My name is Dwight Brown. I'm the owner of Home Helpers Home Care. My office is located right next door to the beautiful up-and-coming 299 Thousand Oaks Boulevard development in Thousand Oaks. As a business owner, I believe that helping the community can also help to build a business. So I'm a donor and sponsor to many local nonprofits, including the Conejo Free Clinic, the TO and Westlake Rotary Clubs, Mary Health of the Sick, Senior Concerns, Casa Pacifica, among others. I'm a board member of Senior Concerns, the Westlakers, and I'm the board chair of the New West Symphony. I'm here tonight to speak regarding funding for the New West Symphony and our local arts organizations. As you know, our theaters enjoy 3 robust resident companies. These companies employ many area professionals, including performing artists, actors, dancers, musicians, designers, crew, and staff. The theaters and the work of the resident companies are large and important economic generators. This was shown in prior multiplier effect studies by Pepperdine University students, and more recently by the Americans for the Arts study conducted by the Cultural Affairs Department 3 years ago. Those who attend our theaters also purchase gas, they eat at our restaurants, and they stay in hotels right here in the city, bringing dollars into our local economy. California Senate Bill 628, California Creative Workforce Act 2021, supports these statements. It says, quote, "The creative industries are integral and necessary for the recovery, rebuilding, and healing of California in the aftermath of the pandemic. Arts and culture are essential drivers of civic participation and dialogue, and considerable research shows that integrating artists and creative workers into recovery drives better outcomes related to critical concerns, including racial justice, health, education, community cohesion, and public safety," end quote. I would like to add that the most recent Arts Vibrancy Report, an annual report published by the National Center for Arts Research, this report defined the region of Thousand Oaks, Oxnard, and Ventura as an arts vibrant, medium-sized metropolitan area, ranking number 8 in the nation out of 947 metropolitan areas. That's a remarkable recognition for a creative community and one we should be celebrating. But shockingly, the region is number 624 in government support. So while we rank number 8 in the country for the creative work we're doing here, we rank number 624 in the funding we're receiving. You might have guessed that the city of Santa Fe, New Mexico ranked in first place. Just think about the opportunity we have right now to nurture our amazing existing cultural environment, number 8 in the nation. If we could increase government support for the arts, we would increase local tax revenues for our city. Now, when it comes to fundraising and philanthropy, I'm going to quote a recent article on philanthropy.com. Quote, "Overall, 2020 was a banner year for charitable giving in the United States, which rose $471.4 billion, according to estimates from the latest Giving USA report. That's a 3.8% increase over estimated giving in 2019. The quote continues, "Perhaps unsurprisingly, In a year dominated by the pandemic's many effects, donations to human services charities increased 8.4%. Many groups charted a staggering increase in new donors, end quote. I can assure you that arts organizations were not that fortunate. Our doors were shut, our performances had to be canceled, our patrons were and still are unsure of when we'll be able to open our doors for them again. The donors we depend on focus their money on human service charities rather than on the arts. As the Brookings Institute said in a report last year, the fine and performing arts will be the hardest hits, suffering estimated losses of almost 1.4 million jobs and 42.5 billion in sales. The result here is that in Ventura County, the arts have been overlooked for the last 17 months. And on behalf of the New West Symphony Board, I'd like to request to consider increasing the arts funding to $500,000. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Next, we have former Police Chief Tim Hagel.
Okay, let's see.
Hi there.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hey, listen, I was so moved listening to Tabitha, the Community Commitment Award. She made some statements in there that I couldn't even write fast enough. So I think it's a quote, but it's close to an exact quote. And she said, "You're never alone. We have one another to be there for each other. Sometimes you give and sometimes you help. Sometimes you receive it." And I think she just paraphrased everybody I've been listening to on this topic. I think it's so important to thank the staff, the council, but also all the community groups, whether it's the arts or human services. 2021, the community grants in the amount of $665,000 for social human services and $300,000 for the arts is going to make a difference in the Conejo. It's going to show the rest of our area that the rise and the need of the most basic necessities of life: shelter, food, clothing, electricity, access to education. These are paramount pillars in our community. During 2020 and 2021, organizations like Harbor House and Senior Concerns, Many Mansions, Adelante, Art Trek, Play Conejo, and so many others have worked every single day tirelessly, offering up vaccine clinics, testing clinics, utility grants from private donors and from assistance from the city of Thousand Oaks. They've done it together, and they have not withdrawn or reduced their social services, but to the contrary, they've doubled down. Every single one of these social service organizations in the Conejo Valley has doubled down, and they kept their doors open and opened them wider. This need has not changed. And to keep the community stable, we've got to maintain these pillars, these Maslow's needs of helping with access to education, shelter, food, life, health. We've got to maintain these, and I'm confident that every penny that the city spends on these services will be used properly. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we have Carol Shelton.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Bill De La Pena, council members, and city staff. My name is Carol Shelton, and I live in Thousand Oaks. I am on the leadership team of Thrive Conejo, and I am one of the vice presidents of Adelante Comunidad Conejo, and we are part of Conejo Unido. We're so grateful that city leaders have recognized the impact that the pandemic has had on social services and the arts in Thousand Oaks. Creating community grant programs to support organizations whose goals are to take care of our community members and to provide an arts-rich culture in our city is a great way to address the continuing need for support and to help in the recovery from financial losses. As you move forward with these grant programs, Conejo Unido asks that one additional city goal be taken into account during the planning and development process. City Goal A, which focuses on creating a more equitable, accessible, safe, welcoming, and inclusive government and community. The arts have always been a wonderful pathway to inclusion in our community. I want to share our family story. Both of my boys have developmental disabilities. They connect with the world through the arts. My oldest spent much of schooling in separate classrooms for the majority of his day. The exception was for the arts. Starting in middle school, he participated in choir. He never truly felt that sense of belonging until he was part of the choir community. He was included. He is at his best when he is performing or preparing for a performance. His time participating in choir prepared him for a lifetime of performing. Thankfully, our community has 2 programs for him. He performs with Conejo Theater for Everyone through a collaboration between CRPD, Therapeutic Recreation, and Young Artists Ensemble. He also performs with Always on Stage. Both of these wonderful organizations feature actors with and without disabilities on the same stage. Our family has seen how the arts fosters inclusion. Everyone should have access to the arts. I ask that you add the city's equity and inclusion goal to the community grants program because ensuring that social service and the arts are available and accessible to everyone in our community is a great step toward making the ideals of equity and inclusion a reality in Thousand Oaks. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. Next, we have Leanne Portzel or Portzel. Okay, next then Leanne is not here. Then Jessica Quintanilla.
Good evening, Mayor Bill de la Peña, council members, and city staff. My name is Jessica Quintanilla, and I live in Thousand Oaks as a member, and I'm a member of Adelante Comunidad Conejo. We are so grateful that city leaders have recognized the impact that the pandemic has had on social services and the arts in Thousand Oaks, creating community grant programs to support organizations whose goals are to take care of our community members and to provide an arts-rich culture in our city. It's a great way to address and continuing the need for support and to help in the recovery from financial losses. As you move forward with these grant programs, Conejo Unido asks that one additional city goal be taken into consideration during the planning and development process, City Goal A, which focuses on creating a more equitable, accessible, safe, welcoming, and inclusive government and community. The arts have always been a wonderful pathway to inclusion in our community. For me, as a member of a Latino community, it's so important to see myself represented and teach my kids our culture and traditions. The day of the concert of Las Cafeteras in Thousand Oaks Community Park, I took my kids, nieces, and nephews to see the show. It was so inspiring for them to see themselves being represented in this community with the beautiful music and dance performance, and also see the racial diversity enjoying the show. It is really, really nice to see we are being included. And I hope this is just the beginning, just like the CVUSD start to celebrate Hispanic heritage few years already. We are a very important asset to this community. Let's ensure that social services and the arts are available and accessible to our community too. It will be a great step towards making the ideals of equity and inclusion a reality in Thousand Oaks. Thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. And Jessica Quintanilla was our last speaker. I would like to go back to the proposal made by one speaker, I believe it was Mr. Brown. The New West Symphony has sent letters over asking that the allocation be 50-50. I would be very much in favor of that, and let me let you know why. The arts industry, and you all know this, the arts industry was the last industry to come out of lockdown. Arts and entertainment. The New West Symphony and the ballet, and even Five Star Theatricals, 3 of several nonprofit organizations in our community, they didn't shut down, they didn't give up. They tried to still deliver what they do. It is dance, music, and that is something that we as humans need in order to connect. The ballet did virtual events. The New West Symphony put on an entire season that was a virtual season that took you around the world. It was absolutely breathtaking, and they filmed everything in the Kavli Theater. To know that the New West Symphony and the arts here are number 8 in the country, yet don't receive the support that you would think they would support and actually rank number 624, as they mentioned in their letter, is an indication that perhaps we would need to reconsider the allocation. The newest symphony, the ballet, the five-star, they do education. They reach out. They give classes, music instruction to Title I schools, to low-income kids. They go into the community. And I'm not sure whether you can compare necessarily the budget of a nonprofit, large nonprofit organization to a social service program. During the entire last year, I volunteered for various social service programs in town, but I also had the luxury of, or the opportunity, I should say, to also be part of the arts. And I think Mr. Brown put it very eloquently. He wore two hats, or is wearing two hats. He's on the board of Senior Concerns and on the board of the New West Symphony. And these two groups, social services and the arts, fulfill a very critical need in our community. Did you know that Conejo Valley Unified School District has now hired or actually created a new position, a district-wide coordinator for the visual and performing arts, because they're getting serious about offering much-needed arts education K through 12. CVUSD has a new position that will reach out to the New West Symphony, to the ballet, to five-star, to Conejo Players, to TO Arts, in order to give our students an arts education and learn different cultures. I think that alone is worthy of giving the full $1 million to the arts, but obviously we have limited amounts, but I would seriously ask my colleagues to consider doing a 50-50 allocation. Mr. Adam has his hand up.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to make sure there's clarity about one thing that I noticed from some of the emails I received. Mr. Powers can elaborate on that. This is not CARES Act money. This is not coronavirus aid, relief, and economic security. That's what CARES stands for. I didn't know that. It's not federal dollars. What money is this, Mr. Powers?
These are general fund discretionary dollars that the city council allocated towards community recovery as part of the budget in June.
Right. These are money out. This is money out of the general fund that, again, with careful stewardship and management, we designated to return to the community. So I just wanted that to be clear, because some of the emails I received seem to think that this was federal dollars. It is not. It is not federal dollars. And I certainly appreciate the mayor's impassioned plea. Your love of the arts is obvious. Typically, mayors like to reserve their pleas for the end of the session, but you shared with us in the beginning, so that's fine. And yeah, it's like you said, Claudia, there's never enough money. And everybody's deserving. We got 28 nonprofits that can use the money just as much as the arts. So that's why the Finance Audit Committee, Bob and I, came up with this split. But, you know, I mean, we could talk about that. I'd like to hear what my other fellow council members have to say about that. But I just want to get that very clear about where this money's coming from.
I think the letters did say community grants. It mentioned that the city received $15 million from CARES, but the letter does say that community grants, it mentions that on page 1. But that money, the CARES Act, was spent in different ways.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor Pro Tem Engler, please.
I think Mr. McNamee had his hand up first if he wants to go.
Mr. McNamee, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Englander. I would concur with you, Madam Mayor, that both of these programs, the social services versus the arts, are much needed, very much in demand. They do good work out there in our community and benefit many. I am siding with your argument that the arts are the ones, the first that are cut out of the school programs and wind up suffering the most when they offer the benefits that students need, that the community needs to facilitate learning and development. I am of opinion that, like you, Madam Mayor, that 50% down the middle should be an appropriate allocation for this. Not to say one is more important than the other, but both are equally as important, and we should reflect that in the monies that we allocate. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Engler.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I appreciate that. As Council Member Adam mentioned, on the committee, we looked at the numbers of recipients on either side, and we tried to get to a point where it seemed that everybody was getting an equal share of the money. For me, just in terms of how I look at it, I think the arts in our area, yeah, they do a great job. They work well with the schools. They're deserving of some of this money by nobody's stretch. And whether we give a 50-50 split or give more to social services does not reflect at all on the appreciation of the arts. In my mind, as I look at where the monies go, both organizations, both sides of these organizations leverage whatever money we give by their use of volunteers, and they take very small amounts of money and make it work miracles within our town, both in terms of the arts and in terms of social services. The way I look at it and the way I think that perhaps we need to stay with this 30-70 split is that, the Maslow's theory of hierarchy of needs. There are people in our town who are hurting. They need food. They need to pay the rent. Those are needs that I think that need to be addressed at a higher rate than, say, the arts, which, albeit arts provide a lot to our community. But when someone can keep a roof on their head, that to me trumps that 50-50 split. That's just the way I look at it.
Thank you, Mayor Pro Tem Engler. Yes, there are musicians that are trying to keep a roof over their head. The arts, the people employed in the art industry were, as I said, the last ones to come out of the lockdown. There are programs, thankfully, where the rent is being. There's a moratorium on eviction, I should say, but there is and has been rental help available, funding available to help people pay the rent, and that is across the board. Everybody was hurting and still is hurting in this pandemic, and that includes the essential workers, that includes the musicians. We're basically all in the same boat, and I think what our resident companies are saying or are trying to say is that they don't provide necessarily the food, edible food to our community, but they provide, they nurture our collective soul, especially in this pandemic. That is the sort of food that they provide. And they are also part of the economic engine. And the longer they suffer, the harder it will be for us as a city to recover as well. I mean, we're doing well. We're doing well, but the organizations on which we rely to help us to drive the economy, they're all asking us for help, and certainly I think a 50-50 split would be fair. Mr. Jones, are you there? Yes.
Yeah, it seems like such a strange choice. These two things there's no incongruous to me. Why would you be choosing between social needs of the community and the arts? I mean, I think it's such a strange choice. And do I understand from reading the two recommendations that it says authorize city manager in recommendation number 1 or designate to design and implement a one-time social services grant program in the amount of $665,000, which would go to all these different social services, I understand it. And this number 2 says approve expenditure of available funds of $300,000 for TO Arts, distribution grants, et cetera. Does this mean they're coming from 2 different pots of money?
No, they're coming from the same. They're coming from the same, but I am advocating for at least a 50-50 split, because while other industries have been able to open up sooner, the arts industry has not, and they still really can't. We still cannot fill up the theater to full capacity.
Councilmember Jones, if I may jump in, the $300,000 to TO Arts, the reason it had to be phrased that way is because the city would essentially cut a check to that TO Arts for $300,000, and they would implement the program. The $665,000 program would be implemented by the city with the review of the Community Funding Review Committee, and so the checks wouldn't be cut just yet. We'd go through the grant program, but the $300,000, the check would be cut to TO Arts, and they would essentially distribute those funds. And that's the only reason that they sound a little bit different there.
They would both then be coming from identical funds, is that it?
Correct. Correct.
Well, I don't like to have to choose between the 2 things. I know when you're in public office, you have to do a lot of things and make a lot of choices that are not appealing.
Well, Councilmember Jones, you don't have to choose between the 2 recommendations. The recommendation is to approve both of them. It's just what Mayor de la Peña is discussing is just the split. So we had essentially $1 million, and it's the split of how those funds would be allocated.
Why did you decide on $1 million? Where did that idea come from?
So, Councilmember Jones, if I may, that was what you as the city council approved in June as part of this one-time community investment fund. So this is just an above and beyond extra benefit that you're providing to both nonprofits and arts organizations. So this is just taking discretionary general fund dollars that were available based on our financial performance last year, and you're doing this special allocation. It happens to be just to arts and nonprofit groups both. We just need to determine what the split is so that the program can be administered.
Mr. Powers, didn't the social services groups also receive $200,000 recently?
The one-time COVID relief grants were $130,000, and they were very specific to programs that were assisting people with immediate needs due to COVID.
In addition to that, was there another grant program that we administered?
There is our annual social services grant of $100,000. And then also we did offer the rental credit for the arts yes. group. So $15,000 rental credit to the resident companies and $1,500 to the nonprofit groups as a rental credit.
Yes. So, Mr. Jones, what I was suggesting is a 50-50 split. So it would be about $500,000 for social services and nearly $500,000 for the arts distribution. That was.
Well, Madam Mayor, I like the idea of increasing the money for the arts, but I don't like the idea of taking it away from social programs. I wonder, is that $1 million hard and fast? Could we raise that million total a little bit?
So let me jump in here. As Mr. Powers mentioned, through our budget process, we identified that $1 million that the city could put into the budget as this one-time grant program. Part of that is because despite COVID, we were still able to have a good year last year financially, and with our longstanding financial strength and leadership from city council and management. You know, we are very strong financially as a city throughout the state, one of the top rated cities in the entire state. So that million was developed as part of the budget process. That said, if council did want to add more funding, that certainly could be included, but we would have to come back to city council at a different date to add additional budget appropriation because we don't have that budgeted. So it would have to come back at a later date in order to add additional budget if council so choose to do that.
Well, would you entertain a motion to do that? Here's what I'd like to do. I don't want to be difficult, but I'd like to raise the 300,000, but I don't want to take it away from social programs, and like to move that we raise the money for the arts from 300,000 to 500,000, and we leave the 665,000 alone for and whatever we need to do technically to accomplish that, that's part of my motion. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion. Mr. Adam.
So if I could interrupt for a second. So
My hand's been up for quite some time.
Yes.
I'm wondering if I could find the.
Yeah, let's hear from the city attorney, and then we'll go to you, Mr. Adam.
Oh, okay.
Thank you. So again, as Ms. Boscarino indicated, it hasn't been budgeted. What we can do is you can ask that staff bring back an additional item at a future city council meeting to adjust the budget to add $200,000 more. That's certainly an option that you can do tonight, but to actually approve it tonight, it's not been agendized nor budgeted.
Okay, Madam Mayor, I would agree with our city attorney, and that's my motion.
Thank you very much. Mr. Adam. Okay, Mr. Powers.
Just to be clear, as city attorney mentioned, from an administrative standpoint, we can approve where we are tonight if the council wishes, and then with an additional direction to bring back an additional budget allocation to the city council that would augment that additional funding for the arts and go into that pot for administration for the arts. So the reason I mention that is that will speed the opportunity for us to begin administering the program rather than waiting on the entirety of it.
Well, I would add that to my motion then.
Thank you, Mr. Adam. Mr. Adam?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you. Well, number one, we just approved $8 million to buy some land. Number two, we just approved another $2 million to fix some streets. I mean, generosity has its limits. I thought $1 million was pretty generous. What I was thinking, and I understand where you're coming from, Claudia, with the 50-50 split. However, if we do that, if you look at the numbers, the social service agencies go down from 665,000 to 482,000. They lose 183,000. If you divide that by the 28 agencies, that's about 6,500 apiece. It's about 25% loss from what the Finance Audit Committee recommended. Well, before the motion was made, I was going to suggest, okay, so maybe we meet in the middle. The way we have it now, it's about 70-30. You're suggesting 50-50. Does anybody think a 60-40 split sounds about right?
Well, we do have a motion on the floor that we need to vote on. And that is Mr. Jones's motion to approve and then come back with additional allocation for the arts next month, I believe it would be. So we would need to vote on that first, Mr. Adam. But I hear you.
I need some clarification on the motion. I guess I don't quite understand it. Are we voting?
My motion, are
we voting to allocate, despite what the Finance Audit Committee recommends, you're voting to override the committee?
No.
And override our finance department, and in essence, dole out more money than what we've recommended. And we're voting on that right now?
There is a motion on the floor, yes.
Or are we voting on to look at it and come back with a recommendation?
No, the motion, may I clarify my motion?
Sure.
And Councilman Adam, I didn't mean to be that dramatic. I mean, we've been very prudent here in the city. And because of the good work of our city treasurer and our city manager and our city councils and all that went before us, we're in good financial shape. I just heard the city treasurer or our economics officer, whatever her title is, say we're powerful. Our financial position, she said, is powerful. Well, if we're powerful, I think we can afford another 200,000 for the arts. So my motion, to make it very clear, is I'm moving the recommended action as put forward by the committee that you and Councilman Engler are on. And the other part of the motion is that we come back at the earliest convenient time and add to the arts from, make it 200,000 more. That's my motion.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. And just to clarify, we're not overriding anyone. We have committees that make recommendations to the full council. And just because 2 council members recommend something doesn't mean we have to go along with that. Most of the time we do, and I respect my colleagues' opinions very, very much. But I think in this case, we're missing an opportunity to actually help our own economy and help other employees, artists, keep a roof over their head, and also help our organizations to continue to educate the children of Title I schools and giving them music lessons. And I think that is very important. As I said, the arts are providing food for the soul, nurture for the soul, and while as social service organizations with their volunteers give the community physical food. So I mean no disrespect, Mr. Adam, by making a different recommendation. It is our prerogative as a council to disagree with some recommendations that are made. It doesn't mean that I am trying to be disrespectful at all. I'm just letting you know what my position is and my opinion is, and that really is all. So the motion is by Councilmember Jones.
If I may, I appreciate your opinion and your position, but I don't have to be reminded about how important the arts are. I'm an original founding member of the Alliance for the Arts,
yes,
and I made very substantial contribution to the arts, and I've supported the arts for years.
Thank you. Thank you for doing that.
Let that be known, okay? However, I don't know.
Your name is on the wall. Your name is on the wall, yes.
Anyway, so I understand the importance of the arts, believe me. I don't know what word you want to use if you don't like the word override the recommendation from the Finance Audit Committee. What word do you want to use? Disagree? Yeah, I guess it's a matter of semantics. But I presume that this motion that Mr. Jones made, when it comes back, we'll have a chance to basically vote on it. I mean, we're not voting right at the moment to supply this extra money. Is that correct?
My motion is the recommendation before us. I'm moving that exactly as the committee recommended it.
No,
I'm also adding, may I finish? I'm also adding another part to the motion, that staff come back with an extra $200,000 once that we've gone through the format we need to, and that 200,000 will be available to the arts. I would also like to add, and I didn't mean for this to become controversial. My wife and I are patrons of the arts. We belong to LACMA and the DeYoung Museum and the Legion of Merit Museum, and we contribute to the arts too. So I think we're all in favor of the arts here. And I am actually moving the motion before us, just as written, with one more proviso, and that is we come back with another $200,000 for the arts.
All right, so we have a motion. Mr. Powers, you have your hand up.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Just wanted to clarify for everyone that we will bring back, as we do with any recommendation, we'll bring back the budget allocation for it and determine where those funds exactly will come from. So that will come back to council as a distinct item to act on.
Thank you. Very
Well,
good.
since I had the most questions about this, and since I sat on the Finance and Audit Committee, and I felt that we very, very carefully considered what we're proposing to you tonight, I'm going to support the motion because I can't, within me, vote against the arts. And that's what I'm being asked to do if I don't support the motion. And as important as the arts has been to me and to my family and to the community of the last 25 plus years, I'm not going to be put in that position. I get what everybody's saying and all the testimony about how important the arts are. Believe me, I just would say, generosity has its limits, and we are in a very fortunate position right now to be able to be generous. So with that in mind, I will support the motion.
Thank you, Mr. Adam. This is actually, we are in a wonderful position to be able to be more generous. And there is no better time to be generous than now, when we're coming out of this long, dark tunnel called COVID, when so many people have suffered. And I know it's not going to break the bank if we allocate another $200,000-$300,000, whatever it is, to the arts, so they can continue to deliver what they do. So I'm glad that the social services will retain all that money. Social services, super important. But I think the motion makes a lot of sense. So thank you. And Mr. McNamee, your hand is up too.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. It's been quite entertaining listening to the discussion going back and forth. Ms. Boscarino has, again, the budget that we approved in June, allocated $1 million. I am a firm fiscal responsible elected, and I really think we should stick to that $1 million total. To pull it from somewhere else means other services will not be allocated. I agree that it's kind of difficult to look between social services and the arts, because both of them are very vital and very important in our community. And that's why, again, I do not want to vote for this the way it stands with C1 and C2, with the potential of coming out and spending another $200,000 in discussion that may get turned down or it may get approved. In both cases, if it's turned down, then the arts lost out on their $200,000 increase to $500,000. If it's approved, now we're taking money from somewhere else that we could use it, and it wasn't originally designed in the budget. And I trust Ms. Boscarino's assessment on the budget and where things need to be. So I'm not going to be moving forward with the motion that Mr. Jones has proposed. And I would like to just go back to the 50-50 split between the two. And it's a very difficult choice, and both of them are very vital in our community. Can't make that decision, so 50-50 to me is where I want to be.
Okay, we have a 50-50 split proposal versus the motion by Mr. Jones. Mr. McNamee, would that be a subsequent motion?
How do we handle that? Because we have one on the floor right now.
We
Do
have
we
one
vote
on the
that?
floor, but you can make a subsequent motion.
Yep.
Mr. Jones, what Mr. McNamee is proposing is a 50-50 split, because there's no guarantee that the $200,000 would be approved should it come back before the council. So would you be amenable to a 50-50 split?
No, I thought I made that clear. I realize we've been debating this a long time. I don't want to take money away
Okay.
from social services. Okay, so that's why I made my motion, and my motion still stands.
Okay. Mr. Adam, Mr. Engler.
Why don't we vote on the motion, Madam Mayor?
I'd like to hear what Bob has to say.
I'd like to call for the question on the
Okay,
motion.
we have a motion, so we'll vote on the motion. Madam Clerk?
Madam Mayor, just for clarification, we are voting on the amended motion by Councilmember McNamee?
By Mr. Engler, I'm sorry, Jones, Mr.
Okay,
Jones.
got it.
We're not going to hear Councilmember Engler's remarks?
No, because we have a question already that's been posed, and procedurally, we have to take that up first, is my understanding.
Yeah, I called for the question. We could vote on whether or not to hear it. I mean, when a person calls for the question,
We need to vote.
then you could vote on whether to bring the motion up or not.
Yes, you called for the question. And that was your motion.
Well, I would like to vote on the motion I made.
Correct.
About using the present formula tonight and then coming back with another 200,000.
Okay. Go ahead and vote, please.
Councilmember Adam?
Yeah, yes.
Councilmember Jones?
Aye.
Councilmember McNamee?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Engler?
Yes.
Mayor Bill de la Pena?
Yes.
And Madam Mayor, that motion carries 4-1 with Councilmember McNamee voting no.
Okay, so anyone else had a motion?
Well,
Subsequent motion, Mr. Engler, where are you? You disappeared on me. Oh, there you are,
Madam Mayor,
okay.
I think we've already taken care of the matter.
Yes, we have. He lowered his hand. Okay. All right, so that is now the item 10C. It passed. And now we go to City Manager.
Thanks so much, Mayor Bill de la Pena. We are scheduled for our next city council meeting on the Tuesday, the 14th of September. Right now, we're working on a number of items that will be considered for that evening, including consideration of an item regarding modification of the Timber School project, the Daylight project that council is aware of, along with some small pre-screen requests that have come in subsequent this summer that will be brought forward to the City Council for discussion and consideration. That's on the 14th of September. Wishing everyone a very happy Labor Day weekend.
Thank you very much. And we will go into closed session, and I will call on the city attorney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We have 4 closed session matters tonight. The first 2 are public employee performance evaluations pursuant to Government Code Section 54957B1, and that is for the city attorney and the city manager. And the second 2 are conference with labor negotiators pursuant to Government Code Section 54957.6, and those are also for the city manager and the city attorney. And it is unlikely I will have anything to report.
Thank you so much. And we will adjourn tonight's meeting in memory of one of our city's great leaders, Lawrence Horner. He passed away July 14th. Larry was an armed forces veteran, an accomplished businessman, and a dedicated Thousand Oaks public servant. A native of Indianapolis, Larry held a bachelor's and master's degree in engineering from Indiana University. After serving in the Army during the Korean War, he met and married Betty Thurman and moved to Southern California, where he worked in the aerospace and defense industry for Lockheed, Litton, and finally as vice president of Northrop Corporation in Newbury Park. Larry Horner was first elected to the Thousand Oaks City Council in 1974 and retired in 1990 after 16 years of exemplary community service, including 4 terms as mayor. He was one of the few council members serving as mayor numerous times. Larry also played a crucial role in helping to advance the civic landscape as the first Black council member and mayor in Ventura County, and first to serve on the Thousand Oaks City Council. Larry Horner was a true civic leader, serving on the General Plan Review Committee, Conejo Open Space Conservation Agency, City Finance Committee, Cultural Facility Committee, City Library Board of Trustees, Federal Funding Committee, Rent Review Committee, Southern California Association of Governments, Ventura County Association of Governments, and the Triunfo County District Board. While serving as mayor and council member, Larry achieved a remarkable legacy by setting a sound economic base for the city, establishing senior citizen facilities, teen programs, and increased supply of affordable housing. Every aspect of the community has his touch on it, from the Oaks Mall, the Ring of Open Space, traffic circulation, housing needs, and yes, the swing vote for the Civic Arts Plaza. Married for 66 years, Larry and Betty raised 3 children and together contributed countless hours volunteering in our community. Larry loved Thousand Oaks and all the people that he tirelessly worked for. Larry's commitment, leadership, and passion for public service is an integral part of Thousand Oaks' history and its future. So to his wife, Betty, and all his family and friends, Larry Horner will be greatly missed. And a memorial service, I believe, is set for September 11. Good night.